What a weekend in MMA. Welcome to another episode of Submission Radio. It's the 1st of March. I'm Dennis Shkaradov. I'm here with Kasper Ozlowski. So much to talk about from this weekend's worth of fights, isn't there, Cass?
Yeah, it's been a big weekend. Victor, 11 UFC 184 and Bellator 134. We're going to be talking about them all. A lot to talk about. We're also going to be covering topics such as Joe Rogan's accusations of Fedor on PEDs, what to do with Ronda Rousey and the women's bantamweight division. Heaps and heaps of stuff to talk about. And of course, we've got some big guests. We have Rich Franklin returning to the show once again. A lot to chat to Rich about. He's always a fun guy to have, and a brand new addition, Andrei Arlovski. It's going to be a great pleasure to have Andrei on the show. Can't wait to chat to that guy. He's obviously got his big fight at UFC 187 against Travis Browne. I'm excited.
That's right, Cass. And guys, if you still haven't, make sure you follow us on Twitter at SubmissionAUS. A lot of exclusive content. Me and Cass and the team are packing our bags and going to Adelaide to talk to you about the UFC Adelaide event, Mark Hunt versus Stipe Miocic. Of course, the presser will be on the channel, youtube.com/SubmissionRadioAU, but we'll have a lot of exclusive content. We're going to have a lot of interviews, updates, and the Twitter feed is going to have a lot of exclusive content too, so make sure you follow us. Also, Cass, for everybody listening at home, Arlovski will be on first, Rich Franklin will be on second. So if you guys are looking to find out how the guests are going to be lined up, that's the way it's going to be. And with Arlovski, Cass, it's going to be an interesting one because he is fighting a former teammate. We're interested to find out how he feels about Travis Browne. I don't think anybody's ever covered this before, so I think we might be the first guys to talk to him about this matchup, and obviously his historic career, some of the fights with Tim Sylvia, his first title run, how he got back into the UFC, his fight with Fedor. You mentioned we'll be talking about Fedor. What did he think about all of that? So all of that to talk to Andrei Arlovski about during the interview.
Yeah, I'm interested in looking back at the career of Andrei Arlovski. He's got a really interesting story. That guy really came back from the dead. So get on there, subscribe, check it out. Hit us up on Twitter at SubmissionAUS. Let us know what you think. As always, guys, with the topics that we discuss and talk about, give us some comments. Let us know what you think. Give us feedback. And I think it's time for our first guest.
Our next guest is fighting Travis Browne at UFC 187. He's a former UFC heavyweight champion and has fought across companies such as Affliction, World Series of Fighting, Strikeforce. Ladies and gentlemen, Andrei Arlovski is on Submission Radio. Andrei, welcome to the show.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Andrei, for coming on the show. It's a real pleasure. Andrei, May 23rd is a couple of months away. You'd be in the beginning stages of your camp for Travis Browne. How's it all going so far?
I just started, It's like I did some, I would say probably I had the active holiday back at home, and I play hockey. I hit backs, I did some stuff, and hopefully I came to Albuquerque with some, already, I'm ready to train, and I had a couple workouts with my strength and condition coach, Adrian Gonzalez, to elevate, and everything good.
Wonderful. Sounds like you're really starting to get into it, Andrei. Now, before we discuss what's happening at UFC 187, we want to jump back in time and have a look at a couple of highlights in your career for all the listeners listening across Australia and around the world. We read that from a very young age, you reportedly got bullied, which motivated you to get into the gym and was one of the factors, that possibly got you into MMA. Was that one of the factors that got you into MMA, Andrei?
No, absolutely not. So all my life, still age 20, I wanted to be a strong guy. I wanted to be a Mr. Olympia bodybuilder. And I just, at age 16 and being police academy, I started doing Sambo and kickboxing and judo. And I said to myself, why not? I want to try myself in MMA. And in 2000, I came in the States and started competing in the United States.
Now, fans are now seeing a lot of Russian Sambo fighters coming to the UFC, Andrei, and you won silver medal at the Sambo World Cup and another silver medal at the World Sambo Championship at a young age.
No, gold, not silver.
Gold?
Once it was silver, once it was gold, and third time it was bronze, first one.
Sorry about that, Andrei. Okay, glad we clarified that up. I'm curious, how did you get involved in Sambo, and what was the experience like for you?
Like I said, I was in police academy. I was big, strong kid, and commander gave me an order to compete in heavyweight divisions, and I had no idea what to do. We practiced for a couple weeks before the tournament. I took second place, And the reason why I took second place because when I met guy in the finals, at least he tried to do something. I just like grabbed him and like 5 minutes I just walked. They gave me a warning and he won by one point. And I thought to myself, oh, it's a good idea to maybe start training in Sambo because you're gonna be off the duties, you're gonna have like really good benefits. So I decided why not, and how come I became like a member of national Sambo team, and I started training in kickboxing back in 15 years ago. I met some guys. They brought boxers from Belarus to United States, and I won. I was first guy who competed in MMA, and I love it. And since that, I spend most time in the United States, and yeah, I am who I am.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's an amazing history and background. Now, you had some amazing fights during your first run in the UFC. I just want you to take us back to the moment when you first won the UFC Heavyweight Championship by beating Tim Sylvia at UFC 51. You know, what was that moment like for you? Take us back to that moment.
I was the happiest man on earth. So, and also it was a while ago, and, you know, I pretty much forget that I was a world champion. I have goals in front of me, and I just need to reach my goals and follow my dreams. That's it. I don't live with the past, you know. I have to live this present and look in the future. So.
Yeah, of course. Well, I mean, with Tim Sylvia, he is someone who will always be tied to you due to, you know, some of the historic fights and moments that both of you shared. You know, when you think of your fights with Tim, what's the one moment that stands out the most to you?
Like I said, I was a champion, but I was the happiest man, and I just looking forward, you know. Now I have to face my former teammate and friend, Travis Browne, so that's it.
Absolutely. Now, we just want to go back to, you know, your first time outside the UFC. You had a bit of a difficult run. You lost a few fights in a row, 4 fights in a row. Just tell us, what was that time like for you? Was it a frustrating period? Because a lot of people were talking about, oh, you know, we'd like to see Andrei retire. But just wondering, what was that moment like for you around that time?
First of all, I was pissed. And people who said this, especially who was like around me. And I gave a call to Greg Jackson. I asked him what you think. He said, absolutely not. You have a lot of things to do. Just come to Albuquerque, train with me, and we're going to start everything all over again. And I said, okay, sounds good to me. And since 2009, I believe, or 10, no, 10 or 9, I'm training here. All my camps in Albuquerque, New Mexico, is Greg Jackson.
It's funny you say that because in 2011, Greg was actually in Sydney, Australia. We had the same conversation with him. We asked him, you know, what's happening with Andrei? And Greg said, you know, I'm not ready to give up on him. You know, we're still going to train. We're going to, you know, do our thing. And from August 2011, you went on to win every single fight. You know, the only fight you've lost was Anthony Rumble Johnson. You know, what do you credit to this resurgence in your career? And, you know, what did you change?
You know what, like I repeat over and over, and I start training with Greg Jackson even before Emelianenko fight so far the most important fight in my life. It might be different story right now, but so I guess everything happened for a reason, and I really appreciate for that hand of help what Greg Jackson gave me. And yeah, now everything good. Right place, right coaches, and I have, like I said, I have a lot of things to do.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Now, fans were absolutely excited when they found out that you were going to be making a return to the UFC. You made your big return at UFC 174. What went through your mind, and what did you think when you finally realized that you're going to have that second run in the UFC and you made it back into the company?
Well, I nervous a lot, and I didn't happy with my performance against Brendan Schaub, but it's okay. The first step, he always like the hardest one, and yeah, I had a lot of I had a lot of criticism. Even like Dana White, he was pissed, but it is what it is, you know. Now I feel better. I get my confidence back, and everything good.
And just before we talk about your fight against Bigfoot Silva, you know, when you were fighting in those other companies like Affliction, Strikeforce, World Series of Fighting, was the UFC always a goal for you at that time? Was the UFC where you wanted to be?
When I left UFC back in 2007, I believe it was a business decision for myself, for my team, and I competed in many different promotion companies and different sites. I knew one sooner or later I'm gonna back in the UFC, and this has happened back in June 2014, and now I'm a member of UFC, a member of big family. And they have Arlovski version 2.0, so I'm very happy.
Mm. Yeah, and speaking of, great moments, your last fight, you got redemption and knocked out Bigfoot Silva in the first round in his hometown of Brazil. Judging by your victory dance, you were pretty happy. How did it feel to redeem that loss and have such a big win in your opponent's backyard?
Oh, it was hard, and I knew that whole crowd gonna be against me, and just 6 police officers from São Paulo. When I went on a press tour before the fight, they kind of liked me. We spent some time together. We went to shoot together in Brazil, and they told me we're gonna be in your corner, even like whole Brazil gonna be against you. And yeah, it was hard, but thanks to my trainers, Greg Jackson, Said Hatim, Andrei Arlovski, my boxing coach, they put me in the right way, and they make my feel my head straight, they all negatives they put in the right way, and yeah, I beat Tim Silva, and I beat Bigfoot, and I'm very happy.
Yeah, I think everyone else was cheering other than, some of the Brazilian fans in the crowd. And on any other day, fans would have gone crazy for a KO like that. When you jumped on the cage and yelled out a few things to the crowd afterwards, your corner was pleading with you not to say those.
No. Let's make me this straight. I didn't yell to whole crowd. I yelled to one person. When I jump on a fence, he showed me fuck you. They show me I'm gonna kill you. They show he's gonna cut my throat. That's why I told him fuck you and all this stuff. But I never did anything like that. And in the future, I will not do anything like that to whole crowd. If some person gonna be big, definitely he gonna get something back, but definitely not the whole crowd. Come on, I built my image for 15 years almost, and lose because of I'm gonna dig head to the whole crowd. Absolutely, it's not like Andrei Arlovski.
Sure.
Was especially for one person. That's it.
Okay, good. Yeah, I'm actually really.
Be honest with you, be honest with you. When I beat Bigfoot, and when I went from Octagon, I went to the dressing room. Whole crowd started kissing me, start asking me to take some pictures, to sign something, and it was kind of first time I didn't want to to sign something and do something because 5 minutes ago they booing you, they were not happy to see you beat a fight against your guy from Brazil, and for some reason 10 minutes later, they became the best persons in ever. It was kind of disgusting, but it is what it is.
Wow. I'm actually glad you explained that. Even me personally, I didn't know, what that was, but it's good that you explained that it was just to one guy. Let's talk about your upcoming fight against Travis Browne at UFC 187. You obviously know Travis Browne very well. The two of you trained together at Jackson, Winklejohn for, quite a long time. As you had been teammates for a while, was there any hesitation for you, taking the fight with Travis because of your relationship with him?
I don't like this fight. I don't want to fight him, but it is what it is. If I want to move forward, and I just had to fight. I have to fight Travis Browne, and absolutely right. He's my friend. We were teammates for a long time, and deep inside, I don't like this fight. Yeah, he's tough. He's dangerous, definitely, but it's a business. It's nothing personal. It's business.
Yeah, and I'm just wondering, obviously you guys probably still speak on the phone. Did you guys have a chat when this fight was announced, and what did you say to each other, knowing that you're going to have to prepare for each other going into this fight?
No, he just left before his last fight. He left Albuquerque. He trained in California, and it's funny because he let me live in his house when I was in the camp before my Bigfoot fight, and he called me and he said, "Yeah, I moved out. You better take your stuff out." And I asked my friend, another friend from Albuquerque, to go to his house and take all my stuff, and that's it. We just called each other, text each other a couple of times, and so far that's it.
Well, I know you guys are obviously friends, but let's talk stylistically. What do you think? What do you think are the biggest things you have to watch out for with Travis Browne, the dangers, and what do you think you have the advantages over with Travis Browne?
Like I said, he's tough. He's number 3, and he's not a joke. He's a really dangerous opponent for me.
Absolutely, Andre. And, obviously, you've already got 2 wins in the UFC. With this big win over Travis, it could catapult you, into possibly fighting for the title next. Just wondering, what are your thoughts on the current interim champion, Fabricio Werdum and Cain Velasquez? And have you mentioned that you're always looking forward. Have you and Greg spoken about how you'd match up with those guys, a rematch, Fabricio Werdum?
First of all, one step at a time. Secondly, it doesn't matter what I think about Werdum. He's an interim champion. He's going to fight the champion, Velasquez. So one step at a time. Now I have to focus on my fight against Travis Browne, and we're going to think about depends what's going to happen on May 23rd.
Well, we're very excited, obviously, for that fight. Andre, we've just got a few fan questions. When we told the fans you're coming on the show, they jumped at the chance to send a few questions. I've got to read out a couple of them. We've got one here from a man, Big Steez. He said, you took on a man who many feel is the greatest of all time, Fedor, during his prime for the Affliction experience. What was it like for you, and what are your thoughts about Joe Rogan's comments that it was likely that Fedor may have been on PEDs?
Next question. I have my opinion about that situation, but I'm going to tell you in the future. But next question, please.
All right, we'll wait for the Andrei Arlovski book. Andre, this is one from Captain Crunch 6. You had some issues with Overeem when you first joined Greg Jackson's. You guys look like you've patched up your relationship now. What's your relationship like now with Alistair?
With who? With Alistair Overeem?
With Alistair, yeah.
We're just teammates.
Okay, wonderful. We got one last fan. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Go on, Andre.
No, that's it. We just teammates. That's it. Nothing more.
Right. So there's no friendship there. There's no relationship outside the gym.
No.
One last fan question, Andre. We got a fan question here from Crazy Bones. Crazy Bones would like to know, out of all the amazing knockouts that you've had throughout your career, what would you say is your favorite one out of all of them?
I don't know. It doesn't matter when you knock somebody out, but definitely remember when people knock you out. And my nightmare is fucking when Emelianenko knocked my ass out in Affliction card. So it's ridiculous. It was so far back in 4 years ago. It was the biggest fight in my life, and I fought like I just have bad words. Fought like anyway. I did what I didn't supposed to do. I jumped with flying knee. I gave him a present. I would love to if UFC gonna sign him and I want a rematch.
That's interesting, Andre, because you mentioned that you're always looking forward. What is it about that fight that happened 4 years ago that's still bothering you so much?
No, first of all, because fight before when I fought Ben Russell, I jumped with a flying knee. And I heard Ben Russell, people went crazy, and for some reason I thought I can do anything what I want. I can throw elbows, knees, and I jumped with a flying knee when I fought Emelianenko. And I didn't cover myself, it just lights out, John McCarthy woke me up, and that's it. He said, yeah, buddy, that's it. And but first 4 minutes, I saw that every kick, every punch, got the target. I saw he was hurt. I just need to at that time I needed to stick with the game plan, first or second round, and I whooped his ass definitely. But it is what it is. Fact that he's knocked my ass out, and I lost that fight.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, obviously he's retired, but the UFC is always trying to get him back in. If he ever did make it into the UFC, would that be a rematch that you'd be interested in, Andrei?
100%, like Nike, just do it.
Oh, hey, people would still be interested in that, absolutely. All right, Andrei, we're going to finish the interview with something very quick and fun. The Submission Radio tap-out round. We just throw a bunch of fun questions at you, and you answer with the first thing that comes to your mind. Are you ready?
Yep.
All right, you've got a pit bull named Maximus. Do you take Maximus with you to training every day at Jackson Winklejohn's?
Not every day. It's 3-4 times a day. He's like my shadow. He's always with me.
Nice.
He's now even with me in the car.
Oh, man.
He was extremely cute as well. Everybody needs to check out photos of him. Now, Andrei, we've always wanted to ask you, what was it like shooting Bully Beatdown? Do you have any funny stories from the experience?
It was fun, and more fun was when before that show, that guy who was supposed to fight when we were in a cage. He told me, "I whoop you, guy. Just watch me." I said, "Okay." And that's it. Yeah, it was fun. I would love to have another episode if somebody gonna invite it.
I reckon you should take over as the host of Bully Beatdown. Andrei Arlovski's Bully's Beatdown. I think that'd be awesome. Now, Andrei, what was it like working with Jean-Claude Van Damme, a Universal Soldier, and did you show him any moves?
It was fun. Definitely, it was fun. And once I remember we went to had lunch or dinner. I don't remember. And it was snow. It was dirty outside, you know. And he tried to show me some kicks, and he like kicked me on my back. I said, "Listen, guy, if you want to show me something, just let's come. Like let's go to the gym and let's work over there. Don't try to destroy my nice and very expensive clothes." Understand? And that's it. But it was fun. He was my hero when I was back 25 years ago when I was a kid, and I had posters all over my room in my house. Yeah, it was fun.
Now, Andrei, this is an important question that fans would like to know. Are you ever planning on shaving off the beard and possibly going with a mustache into a fight?
One more time, what?
Would you ever plan on shaving off your beard and having a cool mustache going into a fight?
Absolutely not.
All right, well,
maybe in 20-30 years, but not now.
All right,
you are looking forward, Andrei.
Now, Andrei, John Dodson told us that he likes to spar with you in practice because he moves very quickly, and you have a hard time hitting him. You know, have you caught John Dodson yet? And how was it sparring with John Dodson?
Tough midget. No, he's I like to move around with him because it definitely works for me. But come on, what do you mean I can punch him? I punch him all the time. He's crying like a baby.
Now,
he's
Andrei,
a good guy and I love him.
Yeah, no, he's an absolute legend. We love having him on the show. Now, a question here is, do you still train Sambo, and could we ever expect to see you do any throws or leg locks in the future in any of your fights in the UFC?
Of course. If I'm going to have opportunity to do leg lock someone during the fight, definitely will do. But I don't want to compete anymore in Sambo.
Do you train it at all though?
In Sambo?
Yeah.
No.
Okay. Well, Andrei, finally, we have to ask this question. We know you and Travis are, good friends, but we have to ask, what's the official prediction? How are you planning to beat Travis Browne at UFC 187 on March 23rd?
I can tell you one thing: the champion, the winner of that fight, gonna be Barry Man, who's gonna do before the fight, who's gonna do next 10 weeks hard work, who's gonna be more disciplined, and he's gonna be a little bit more lucky than his opponent. So it's gonna be the winner of that fight gonna be Barry Man. That's it.
Well,
definitely I will do everything possible to win that fight, but you never know. I don't believe in luck. I believe in hard work. So I promise you one thing: I'm going to train hard, and I'm gonna do everything possible to beat Travis on May 27th.
Well, UFC 187, it's going to be a big show. Guys, you can follow Andrei on Twitter at Andrei Arlovski and like him on Facebook. It's going to be a great fight. I can't wait. Andrei, thank you so much for coming on the show. We really appreciate having you.
Thank you guys for having me. God bless you.
Hi, this is Stephan Bonner, and you're listening to Submission Radio.
All right, guys. Our next guest is the vice president of the biggest MMA company in Asia, ONE FC. He has held the UFC middleweight championship and has had exciting fights with the likes of Chuck Liddell, Anderson Silva, Vanderlei Silva, and many more. Returning to the show, we have none other than Rich Ace Franklin back on Submission Radio. Rich, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing really well. How are you guys doing, man?
Really good, really good. It's always great having you on the show. Rich, we recently saw you in the movie Mantervention. You played Coach Billings. Yeah, we're kicking it off with Mantervention. You know, it's a hilarious romp for those who haven't heard of the movie. You know, tell us a little bit about it. You know, what's your character like, and tell us about the movie.
Yeah, I was on set one day. Did a little filming in an MMA gym. It's about a guy who basically is dating this girl. He started dating this girl, and she pretty much controlled his life. He was practicing MMA at one point, quits the gym and all that kind of stuff, and basically giving up everything for her. And then they break up. He's heartbroken. His buddy is helping him out, takes him through an intervention, but it's called Mantervention, and they're hanging out at his buddy's beach house, and he has to basically run him through all the steps, meeting girls, and so that he forgets about his ex-girlfriend, and he takes him back into the MMA gym. I was in it. The movie, KJ Noons played a small role in the movie. Daniel Cormier was in the movie as well.
Nice.
And he came in the gym, and there was just a little sparring scene between the two of us. It was kind of funny and a good little comedy. But yeah, had a good time. It's a really good movie, man, and they shot that movie in such a short amount of time. But it's funny, but it's not one that's necessarily appropriate for children. So don't take your kids to that one.
Keep your kids away from it. Now, of course, Rich, you know we're going to have to ask you this. You know, since Spencer had to go through all of that to get over his heartbreak, has Rich Franklin ever had an ex-girlfriend that he's had to be put through a intervention for to get over the tough breakup?
You know, I've had. Well, I'll say this: I don't react to that stuff the way that Spencer did, but I've for sure had my share of heartbreak in the past and stuff like that. And then I'll tell you, man, emotional pain is probably as tough, if not tougher, to go through than physical pain for sure.
Yeah, we've been there, you know, tough breakups, walking down dark streets, singing songs we never thought we'd sing, but enough of that. People have always compared you to Jim Carrey, but will we be seeing Rich Franklin in more movies in 2015?
Possibly. Listen, I'm really busy with ONE Championship in Asia, doing the duties that I have for them, and my duties are ever so growing, and we're going from last year we did 12 shows, and this year we're shooting for 24 shows.
Wow.
I'm sure we'll do somewhere between 20 and 24 shows. So that's keeping me very busy. I'm actually right now. I'm in Hawaii right now doing a little seminar with a group of Navy SEALs up here in Hawaii. But I was in Singapore. Actually flew here from Singapore for those doing a little bit of work for ONE Championship down there. But yeah, I'm actively, not aggressively, but actively pursuing roles in movies. And much like my role in Mantervention, my roles, I'll probably keep it to like small things that I can film that'll take a day or two or a week, or nothing that would keep me in filming for months. I have way too many other responsibilities in life with the things I have going on that I can just give up something for that extreme period of time.
Yeah, that's it. You're a busy man, Rich, and we'll get into some of the things that you're into later on in the interview. You know, you brought up ONE FC, so let's talk about it. There's been some rapid growth with the company. Your champion, Ben Askren, is regarded as one of the best welterweights in the world. You know, what's it like having Ben as the face of ONE FC? What's it been like so far?
I'll tell you, Ben, he's a funny guy, and because the funny thing about Asia is that Asians, they're typically they're not trash talkers. You don't see a lot of the trash talking, the hype of fight that you would see in the West. And so Ben brings a little bit of that to the table, but he's definitely got a unique way of going about it. He lives up to his nickname Funky for a reason. We have him slated, I think, on our Singapore card in May this year, and he's fighting Luis Santos. I might be confused now. He's fighting Luis Santos for the title, and that's a tough matchup, man. It's going to be a really, really exciting fight, like one that I'm really looking forward to seeing. So, but yeah, he'll definitely be tested in that fight for sure.
Yeah, no, we're absolutely looking forward to it. You know, you mentioned a lot of the Asian fans. You guys recently had a show in China at the end of 2014. We know China can be a little bit tricky. You know, what kind of reception did you guys get? How big is MMA becoming there?
We had a great reception in China, and in that show we did a 4-man tournament, and you know, we had we had our TV deal there and the arena deal and all that kind of stuff, and the night, it was an amazing night. Like the in China, I'll tell you a funny story. They had the police were there to oversee the shutdown of the stadium auditorium, and they had strict rules for shutting the stadium down. And the night ended with the 4-man tournament, the finalists of the semifinals in the 4-man tournament that we did, and that final fight was as exciting, if not more exciting, than the original Stephen Meyer Forrest Griffin fight of days ago. Wow. And these guys were just everything. Like, you know, I think the police that were there to shut the stadium down completely forgot that they had a job to do and became so enthralled with the fight that it was an electric night, a great opening into China because it was our first show in Beijing. We're doing 10 more shows this year. We'll go to some tier 1 cities like Beijing and Shanghai and a couple others, but we're also going to hit some tier 2 cities across the nation, and I think it's going to be an amazing market for us. We had a great reception there. We had great ratings on television. Our rebroadcast actually beat out several NBA live broadcasts in China rating wise, and so we're really pleased with the opening there and everything, and I think that's going to be a good territory for us.
Yeah, China's a huge market, so that's great to hear. Now, we were looking at some of the vacant titles that ONE FC has, and we're interested in asking you in particular about the super heavyweight title. Are you guys still planning on having a super heavyweight champion, and when do you foresee one being crowned, Rich?
I'll tell you what, that's going to be some time off, I would imagine. Even the heavyweight title, it's just, we're in Asia, and the fighters, you know, when you start looking at like bantamweight, featherweight, and even our lightweight categories, like when you start working your way down to the 55ers and below, like we're stacked with a lot of good talent. We have a lot of fighters, good fighters, like Thai fighters that came out of Thailand that have learned how to grapple and stuff like that. Like just guys that have some good experience. But as you get into the heavier weight classes, the talent pool gets a little more sparse. So I would imagine like just like a super heavyweight title match, we're probably some time off of that. Like it's going to take time to develop some depth in that weight category.
And I just want to double check, you know, when we spoke to you last time, I think last time we spoke may have been July, you know, you were talking about how you were sort of getting your feet planted in your new role as, you know, president there. You know, how are you finding that role in general, Rich?
It's interesting because in a company, like when you look at a fight organization, the fight organization is unique in the sense that there are fighters, there's talent in the fight organization. The fighters, the ring girls, those kind of people. And then there are like executives and staff. And oddly enough for me, within this company, I kind of fall into both roles. Like I'm part talent because I'm a recognizable figure, but I also work outside of the cage. And so I handle responsibilities in generally in both areas. I do quite a bit of PR, some broadcasting stuff, some social media stuff as kind of a talent because I'm a recognizable face. But then on the business side of things, like, and I think I said this before, we have a strong grassroots development through ONE Championship, working with local gyms and local partners in each territory that we go to, helping to build fighters and that basically feed into our leagues for us. You know, we work with gyms that feed into amateur shows, and these amateur shows help create fighters that then come into ONE Championship. And so I help with that and conducting seminars and fighter development and talent scouting. And of course, Matt Hume does, you know, he's the guy that's really deep in all that, and he does the matchmaking, and he does an amazing job. The fights that we do, we have very, very exciting cards. Like I've never been to a ONE Championship fight where I walked away and said like, those fights were okay. Like pretty much every fight on the card is just an exciting fireworks kind of fight. But on my side of things, like I'm starting to do a little bit of stuff with business development and the relationships that we have with other partners and companies outside of the cage, and more of a business manner. So my role is starting to shape up there. I'm really pleased and happy with the things that they have going on for me. And I think for myself with this year with growth, we're doubling the number of shows that we're doing, and the responsibilities of our employees it's very demanding. And anytime you're in a business like this that has this kind of growth, that's what ends up happening. So I think some of the business that our CEO, is unable to handle just due to the workload, some of that gets pushed my direction, and so I take on projects here and there. And but no, I'm really enjoying my role there. I like the team that I work with. I said that before. They're very hungry, very vision oriented. They have a great vision of growth and in this region, and we're making things happen as you can see with this year unfolding.
Yeah, it sounds like you're taking care of business, Rich. Very excited for that. Now, Rich, we owe you a big congratulations as you turned the big 4-0 in October last year. So congratulations.
Appreciate you bringing that up. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. We have to bring you. We build you up, Rich. We build you up. We break you down, and then we build you up. Hopefully by the end of the interview.
Yeah, I got you. It's like a good movie role. You know what I mean? Like that. It can't be all good, but no. Yeah, I did. I turned 40 in October, and so but I feel good at 40. I feel good at this age, and my body's in great shape, man.
You put us to shame. We're in our 20s, Rich. I mean, big 40, very, very impressive. Now, every time you come on the show, every time you go on any show, it's always the big question that's being asked. And, we have to ask it, Rich, whether we like to or not. You turned 40. You're very, very busy with your businesses. Last time we spoke, you weren't sure about it. You had that one last fight left in the UFC contract. What's going on? Are you leaning more towards being done with MMA now because you've got all these responsibilities and all these businesses? Or is it still something that you're looking to do?
Oh, man. I'm going to give you the same answer that I did before.
You can't. You already gave us that answer. You have to change it up a little bit.
I know. Well, I'll tell you this much. Let me just tell you what has changed since the last time we spoke. Pretty much nothing. I basically train every single day of my life, whether I'm not spending as much time as training now as I would if I were getting ready for a fight, obviously. But, I'm still putting in somewhere between 10 and 15 work hours a week in the gym, whether I'm doing conditioning or I'm in actually working with a boxing or kickboxing coach and doing pad work or sparring or grappling or whatever it is that I'm doing. I'm still putting this time in. So I have those days like I'm training all the time, and there's that part of me that's like, man, I'm training all the time. Why not? But again, my responsibilities that I have in other avenues, and like I said before, man, that clock is just tick, 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 ticking away. I'm very driven on the job that I have right now with One Championship, and it would definitely take something special to pull me away from that. But I'm still open to the possibility of doing my last fight for sure.
Yeah, and obviously you're a big part of ONE FC. I mean, the question that a lot of fans are wondering is it a certainty that if you had your last fight, it would be in the UFC, or is there a possibility you could possibly fight for ONE FC or even a Bellator?
Yeah, no, as of right now, I have my last fight is contracted with the UFC, so I would have to, unless they release me. If they release me and I wanted to do another fight, then I could fight for another organization. But no, I'm a contracted athlete with that organization, so the fight would be there.
And I guess the other thing, just one more sort of question on this topic. When we spoke to you back in July, you were saying how you really have to pull the trigger on that fight. And obviously here we are in February, and I completely understand you've got so many projects, and you've got Armagel, which we're going to talk about, and you've got ONE FC and things like that. Are you definitely going to have one more fight, or is it a possibility that, in a year or two you might think, wow, ONE FC's grown, it's huge now, my role is even bigger, maybe I won't have time for a fight?
Yeah, that's definitely a realistic possibility as the days go and all that kind of stuff. I mean, actually, coming here and working with the troops today with the SEALs and everything that I'm doing a self-defense grappling seminar or whatever. I actually flew here from Singapore, and I did a couple-week stint in Singapore, just doing some work that I had to do for the company. I'm going to return back to Singapore, and before I actually head back home to Cincinnati. Now, the fortunate thing is when I'm down there, I've conducted parts of my camps. I basically ran almost 2 full camps at Eddie Ball's MMA down there. So I get great training in when I'm down there. They got a couple guys on that fight team that are my size, and I get to work with them a little bit, and so I can still get some great training when I'm down there. So it's not like I'm falling off the wagon just being out of the country or whatever. Mm-hmm. But it definitely is more problematic with me having to, with all the responsibilities I have with one championship for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Good to see that you're still on the wagon there, Rich. Now, we were talking about the UFC before. We have to ask you, you had a big Twitter update before around the time that it all happened. What were your thoughts? The big news really has been over the last month that Anderson Silva tested positive for PEDs. What went through your mind when you heard that he tested positive?
Well, I'll tell you. A lot of things. I feel bad for him, honestly. Anderson's had this long run, and then, of course, when something like this happens, the fans are going to start asking, well, how long has he been on this stuff?
Yeah.
And for him to have such a run the way that he did, and to come back from an injury the way that he did, it's a shame to think that is going to tarnish his reputation like that. That's what he'll leave his career on, even if he doesn't leave now. That's the overriding. Like the overriding factor that's going to be remembered. Much like Lance Armstrong, he won all those Tour de France's, but as soon as he tests positive for PEDs, that's what people remember is all that stuff, and you tend to forget the accomplishments that the guy had. And so I feel bad for him in that sense. And then you start wondering things like, well, how long was he on that? Like, because there are guys in this sport that they know how to play the system. They know how to take their chemicals and beat the test somehow with. And I don't know how they do it, like with masking agents. And I'm not saying that that's the case with Anderson, but people are going to start questioning that and wondering that. And it just, honestly, my heart bleeds for the guy, man, because to think that he came back from that injury, and I'm sure a lot of it had to do with helping himself recover from the injury and heal from that, especially at this stage in life. He's not 25 anymore. And if that was the case, he was using that to help himself recover. Here we are on the back end of this, and he got popped, and so now that's his legacy is left what it is. And like I said, I feel bad for him in that sense. But we're in a sport where we've taken a hard stance against these PEDs, and it's become more and more prevalent. I guess perhaps the testing is getting more sophisticated, that you see more and more of these guys getting caught with this stuff, and it's a shame, man, because even on my Twitter feed, I can see a lot of the public backlash, disappointment in the fans from these athletes and all that kind of stuff.
I think, yeah, I really appreciate your views on that, Rich. You sound very remorseful for Anderson. I think it's very different with Anderson popping, because usually if someone pops with steroids, people grab the pitchforks and, set him on fire. With Anderson, I think there was a big feeling of disappointment in the MMA community. I want to ask you, though, obviously you fought the guy twice. The middleweight title was on the line, and he's the one who, took over your reign as middleweight champion. So I guess, did it cross your mind at all that, hey, maybe he was juicing at that point? Is it something you thought of, or did you chalk it up to, it was just for the leg?
Listen, to say that I didn't, that thought didn't cross my mind would be a lie. And I don't know. I don't know if he was using it back when he fought me or not. Regardless, I'm not. Even if he did, I'm not sure it would have made a difference, and I don't want to blame a loss on that kind of stuff or anything. So I don't want this conversation to turn into that kind of thing. Like, well, Rich Franklin is blaming, PEDs on his loss to Anderson. Like, that's not the case. Yeah. But you start questioning those kinds of things. Like, somebody on my Twitter the other day, I don't know, somebody tweeted like, I've fought 8 people that have been associated with TRT. It's at some point in time in their career, and I've lost to several of them. And so you start thinking about those kinds of things, like how much of a difference that makes and all that kind of stuff. And so, yeah, that thought crossed my mind. I would probably lean more towards in the Anderson case that this was something that helped him recover from his injury and all that kind of stuff. And on the back end, he ends up getting caught doing it. And that's why I kind of took that stance. Like, I feel bad for him, but then again, if he had been using it the whole time, then it is what it is. But you have no way of proving that one way or the other. So
Yeah.
It really doesn't do me any good to like, what good is it going to do me? Even if all these fighters were using this the whole time, like, it doesn't do me good. Their loss is on my record one way or the other. And so a loss is a loss.
Yeah, that's a great point, Rich. We've heard a lot of people come out recently and say that it's impossible to perform at the level of an elite MMA fighter, and as often as they do without using performance-enhancing substances. Being that you're a guy who's always had a very disciplined and scientific approach to your training and diet, what do you think about these statements like this? Is it possible?
If you want my opinion on things, you can go across. It's not just MMA. Across every sport. We're in an age of science. You're looking for a cutting edge on everything that you do. Whether it comes, like, if you're running a 100-meter dash and it comes down to the food you eat, the supplements you take, the shoes you're wearing, the fabrics that they're made of, the track you're running on, the wind speed that day. If you look at, for example, like sprinters, and you look at sprinters today compared to sprinters 50 or 100 years ago, just the differences in technology of the stuff that we use from tracks and materials of clothing and all that kind of stuff can make a big difference in times. And so you're looking for that edge across the sport. I would be so bold as to say that in sports, when you see people that make a big run, like somebody like me, I'm a good athlete, and I won a world title, and I defended it a couple times, and that's great for me. But when you see some athletes that are just head and shoulders above the competition, and the guys who can win championships and hold them up for years and years and years, and certain dynasty football teams that are able to win so many Super Bowls, you have to start really questioning, like, how can one athlete whose training methods are not significantly different than the rest of the athletes in that sport separate them so much from everybody else for such a significant period of time? And when you look at all these methods of trying to get ahead, whether it be the materials you're using to run in, or the supplements that you take, and where the line is drawn on what's, certain supplements are even on banned substance lists, and but other supplements are legal to take. And so certain of these supplements, all these supplements are going to improve your performance one way or another if they're effective. But somebody there drawing the line, well, creatine's legal, but this testosterone booster is not legal, even though maybe it's just an herb or something like that. And so in this world where you're constantly trying to get a leg up, it's just that's the unfortunate byproduct of this thing. As a professional athlete, we have such a high standard to try to live up to. And not only that, but we're having a conversation about me fighting again, and I'm 40 years old, trying to fight again in a young man's sport. And you depend on things like just good nutrition and taking care of your body and all that kind of stuff. But in the end, like, my body is wearing down and wearing down and wearing down. So we've seen it before with aging athletes, where in order to keep up with the rest of the competition, you start making compromised decisions, which in Anderson's case, I guess you could kind of attribute that to.
Yeah, I love the insight, Rich. And in this age of PED tests and things like that, it's not all bad news in MMA. You're doing your part to help the athletes in not only MMA but grappling and BJJ. We're seeing this product going around now. We're seeing your name attached to it. It's called Armor Gel. It's on your website as well. Can you tell us a little bit about it? What is the product? What does it do?
Yeah, it's a great product that I teamed up with a company out of Utah by the name of American Biotech Labs, and they made this silver-based gel. And I met these guys, sat down and talked with them. They started developing this gel, and I became really interested in the product. We've run clinical trials, and basically, like, in their trials, just with things like staph and ringworm, it's shown to basically hold up a line of defense and ward off things like staph and ringworm, different kinds of bacteria that it produces, like, basically like a barrier of protection against yeast and fungus and bacteria and stuff like that. So this product, like the gel, it's a topical gel that you can put on your skin. I've used this stuff like, I'm traveling all over the world. I'm grappling in gyms in places like Thailand where it's humid and there's bacteria all over the place, and perhaps the mats aren't getting cleaned consistently and stuff like that. So I'll use it when I go into a place like that as like a topical gel that I rub all over my body that'll keep me from getting infected. I'll use it like on the back end. I had a piece of like a spot where I developed staph on my thigh, and started using this stuff on my staph, and it, I mean, literally cleared that stuff up. But it does a lot. It helps with this stuff. Helps with like healing cuts. I've used it before when I've had stitches on my face and really like limited the healing time that I've had. And I'll even use it for just like funny little things, like when I'm traveling. I'll put this stuff like when I'm on a plane, for example. I'm stuck in a bacteria infestation in this fuselage of a plane, so I'll wipe this stuff on my face and kind of wipe it in and around my nose, so that it basically offers a barrier protection that helps like eliminate bacteria and all that kind of stuff just with what I'm breathing. And there's just a ton of stuff that I can use this for. It's great for the skin, for rejuvenation. I had a bad sunburn one time, used it for that. But the gel itself, it's a non-toxic gel. It's just made with silver, like actual silver. And, like silver for years has been used for eliminating bacteria. Like medical instruments are made of silver. I'm pretty sure globally it's accustomed to, like when you come to a fountain, you throw a coin in a fountain. Like, they do that kind of stuff in Australia?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think it's worldwide.
Yeah. Yeah, so that actually stems from people, they used to have drinking wells, and they used to take silver coins and drop them down into the drinking wells to keep the water from going rancid. Like, that's what they would do with silver coins and stuff like that. And so that actually developed into that little, the little thing that we do when we go to a fountain. We just slip a coin into it, but it actually came from people putting silver in their water on ships, like on when you would have these, like, big voyages and stuff like that, and they had barrels of water. They would put like silver in their water and stuff like that to keep it from spoiling and going bad. So silver does a lot for eliminating bacteria and that kind of stuff. But this is just a great topical gel that I use, and I literally always have a tube of the gel on me everywhere that I go. And today is a perfect example. I grappled on this military base, and I was clearly grappling on some mats that had not been cleaned in a long time. And wouldn't you know it, I reached into my bag to put my silver gel on, and I had brought the wrong bag. My other bag had my tube of gel in it. But I'll for sure be back in today. That's for sure. As soon as I get off the phone here, I'll be coating myself with it after I take my shower.
Wow, there's an image right there. Rich, I hope you weren't grappling with like SPF 30 suntan like coconut lotion. Guys trying to get you in like chokes and stuff. One thing about this armor gel, I think you're missing one of the biggest selling points. If you're covered in silver, then technically you can't be attacked by vampires. Wouldn't that be correct, Rich?
This is true, and that's funny that you bring that up, because I just started watching True Blood, the series True Blood.
Mm-hmm.
I'd never watched that when it came out, and so I just started watching that. Yeah, apparently silver is very effective against vampires. And I don't know, it may have zombie type applications as well. I would like to double check that before I actually list it as fact on the radio here.
Yeah.
So don't quote me on that. But anybody who is near any kind of zombies, if they get some armor gel, let me know if it's actually effective against zombies as well.
Well, yeah, if it works, they'll be able to let us know. If not, then we'll obviously never hear from them again. But if you're a grappler, if you're an MMA fighter, armor gel is for you. And also, if you're around vampires, if you're in Transylvania, it can also have its uses. So sounds good, and I hear it's pleasant smelling. Now, Rich, we're going to do what we call the submission rated tap out round. We've already done it a couple of times with you. Bunch of fun questions. We fire them off at you, and I've had the fans throw in a few as well, just for Rich Franklin.
Oh, great. All right, let's do this.
All right, first.
These are one word answers, right?
Don't have to. Well, like short answers, like first thing that comes to your mind.
Okay. Yeah, it's a short answer. First thing that comes to mind. All right, go.
All right. Haters United. Do you still have the truck that you received from the Ultimate Fighter?
I do not. I drove it around for a little while. It wasn't my style of car. It was a bit too flashy for me, so I ended up getting rid of it. However, when I did the second Ultimate Fighter, when I filled in for Tito when he hurt his back and I fought Chuck, I got a car for that as well, and I have a nice '67 Camaro with some hideaway lights and a 502 engine in it with 635 horsepower. And yes, I still have that car.
Nice.
Wow. All right. The next question comes from username Bisexual MMA. His question is the ONE FC president gig just a cover story for a CIA covert operation in Asia?
Well, if that's the case, then I'm not allowed to divulge that information. But my title is Rich Franklin VP 007. I'm not sure what that means.
Okay, well, it points to one thing, and clearly you're a 00 agent. Rich, you're one of 7 kids. You know, growing up, give us a funny story that sticks out to you growing up in such a Brady Bunch.
Oh, a funny story about me growing up in a Brady Bunch. Well, I'll tell you what. I had quite the temper when I was a kid one time, and I was playing with my sister's jacks, and she wanted her jacks back. Jacks is where you bounce the ball and you pick up those little metal things.
Yeah.
And I was probably like 5 years old, and so I wouldn't give her her jacks back, so she just kicked them all over the floor, and I got mad, and I took off my belt. And my belt had a big metal belt buckle on it, and I swung the belt at her. And her and my sister, they got scared and ran from me and locked themselves in the bathroom. They were my babysitters and locked themselves in the bathroom for like 2.5 hours until my mom came home.
Wow, that's a technique that you need to teach the Marines in the seminar. Now, Rich, this is on Twitter about a day ago. You tweeted this. Do you prefer listening to stories from old people or from little kids? This isn't a question, but since you're on the show, we just wanted to let you know that we prefer old people. Grandpa Simpson has always been one of our idols, especially when he tells his stories about having an onion on his belt. That was more of a statement for you to know what our option is with that one.
Well, I'll give you my answer. I prefer listening to stories from old people, but getting advice from young kids.
They say there's a saying, something about the only honest people are drunk people and little kids. I don't know how to lie.
Yeah. Dude, man, little kids, they give advice sometimes, and it cuts to the core, and things to them are so simple. And we have this way of complicating things as adults, and then kids will just, you get advice from a 7-year-old, and you're like, wow. I thought I learned a bunch of stuff in life, but apparently I didn't.
You know, speaking of learning stuff, we've been stalking, it looks like you've been doing some gymnastics to switch up workouts. Does this mean if you do return to fighting, we can expect Rich to do backflip triangles in his next fight? No, but it's funny that you bring that up. I was actually the other day watching some of my old pro fights before I made it in the UFC, just fighting across the Midwest in the USA. And I put this guy in a triangle. He outweighed me by like 35, 40 pounds or something, because back in the day there weren't athletic commissions. And when he picked me up to slam me in the ground, and when he picked me up, I'm not even sure how I did this, but I did this like backflip roll in the midair and landed on my feet somehow. Wow. And I have to see if I can extract that clip and maybe post it on my social media. It's pretty cool to watch.
Yeah, if you find it, tag us. We'll definitely retweet that. That'd be awesome to watch. Now, I've got another question, right? This one is also from Bisexual MMA. He's got a funny name, but he asks great questions. His question is, do you believe that the John Jones crawl towards Vitor Belfort, and I mean, he does that a lot, was inspired by your strategy talk with Matt Serra from The Ultimate Fighter Season 4?
I would definitely have to take credit for that, yes.
Hey.
Now,
it would be wrong of me to not take credit for that, so I'm just going to say yes. It was inspired by me, for sure, because I'm a man of wisdom.
Yeah.
John Jones must owe thousands and millions of dollars of loyalties for using that technique, so we might have to have a chat to him about that. Now, one last question from... Sorry, go on, Rich. I
was going to say, I don't know if I can trademark or copyright strategies, but either way, talk to him about that, because maybe he does owe me some royalties or whatever. Tell him to get with me on it. Let me know.
Yeah, there's a bone to pick there, no pun intended. Now, last question from Bisexual MMA. He wants to know, Dana White and Joe Silva would probably give you any opponent you want at whatever weight you want for what you say is your retirement match. We don't know if you'll ever make a comeback, Rich, but if you do, what would be one name that, would just make you really want to get back in that cage? What's one name out of anyone that you could choose? Who would you want your retirement match to be with?
For me, this doesn't really matter. my last fight, I would just love my last fight to be something like my Vanderlei Silva fight, like good epic battles. If you, especially like my second Vanderlei fight was just a great fight, man. And I would want something like that. And so in the past, I've talked about somebody like Michael Bisping because I believe that Michael and I would put on that kind of a fight.
Yeah. No, Bisping versus Franklin, that'd be awesome. Now, Rich, what's one fight you're most excited about for ONE FC 25, Age of Champions?
Oh crap! I'd have to look at the card because I've worked on 4 cards simultaneously. You got to realize I'm working on our Malaysia card coming up next week, our Manila card, and then also the Singapore card. So if you ask me a question like that, then I'm going to get things backwards, and so I should probably look at a card before I say all that.
Well, that's fine. We spoke about we spoke about ONE FC before, and you mentioned how exciting they all are. So it's definitely still worth watching. ONE FC 25 Age of Champions.
Okay, I'll tell you who I'm interested in. Honestly, is it's one of the prelims. It's Raymond Gonzalez and a guy from Cambodia. His name's Chan Lafana, and I saw him fight before, and he had his stuff together and was entertaining. He actually ended up getting disqualified from the 4-man tournament we did in Cambodia because he stomped on his opponent's face, and he was trying to claim that it was, he came around with a kick or whatever, and it just inadvertently stomped. But he's a very talented fighter, so I'm interested in seeing him get back in the cage again to see what he actually does with this fight. So I'm going to pick that prelim fight as the one that I'm most interested in seeing.
Wow, that sounds exciting. Me and Cass can't wait to check that one out. Now, Rich, we know ONE FC likes to name their events. So here are some. We have a marketing department here at the show, and sometimes we deprive them of food and beverage and seeing their families so they can come up with some slogans for our guests. And they came up with some ideas for names to call ONE FC 28 because we don't believe you guys have a name for that one just yet. So we've got 3 options here, and we want you to listen to them and tell us which one you like the most. Okay, Rich?
Okay, let's do this.
Okay, so
I'll bring this to the attention of our CEO as well.
Yeah, well, we're expecting you to make one of these official straight after you choose one. Obviously, you're the VP. You have all the pull around here. It's okay.
I was just gonna say this is great. If you guys give me 3 bad options and I have to choose one, and it ends up not being named that, then I'm gonna have a bunch of disappointed fans.
Yeah, great options might be an overstatement, but yeah, go ahead, Dennis.
Okay, so here we go. I want you to really imagine this in your mind as I say it, Rich, okay? Because I can only say it once and I don't want to repeat myself. So option number 1, ONE FC 28, who let the dogs out? Now, dogs are spelt with a W. D-A-W-G-S, dogs. Who let the dogs out?
Yeah. Who? Okay. What other way would there be to spell that word when referring to a fight? Okay.
Yeah, option number 2. All right. Now I want you to keep your choice. I know that's a grey one, but don't choose it straight away because there's a second option as well. This one's a bit of a slogan. ONE FC 28. We're here, no fear. Let's win and drink beer. Beer's big in Thailand. It's big in Thailand. I want you to think about that. This is a great marketing opportunity to get a beer brand behind ONE FC. I just want you to think about it. This is a marketing. That's the marketing side. Yeah. And then finally, and this, Rich, this took them a couple of nights to come up with, and we think it was really worth the 48 hours they spent coming up with it. ONE FC 28. Okay, you ready for this one, Rich?
Okay,
here we go. Rich's Revenge. ... Right? So for that one last one to work, you'd need to be sitting ringside with a swivel chair and a fluffy white cat. You'd need to squint and move your eyes from side to side like you're up to something, and you'd also have to have a trap door in the ring as a precaution. So, Rich, those are the 3 options that we've got for you. I know it's a tough one because they're all great, but what's ONE FC 28 going to be called? Which one do you choose?
Oh, man. You guys have given me such a priceless selection of titles. I'm going to have to, well, just the fact that we have a trap door in the 3rd option and it utilizes my name, I'm going to have to go with Rich's Revenge.
Rich's Revenge ...
Yeah. So I'm going to make this suggestion to Victor, our CEO.
Yep.
And we'll see what he says about it.
Yeah, just let us know. I mean, we'll be here waiting. We'll be waiting by the phone. So just let us know when you find out. And the royalties, we don't mind how they come. I mean, it can be check, it can be cash. We really don't mind.
Okay, gotcha.
In all seriousness,
It's appreciative that you guys are easy to work with like that.
we're easy like that, you know what I mean? Yeah, all about making it easy. Guys, you can watch ONE FC 25 Age of Champions on March 13th live from Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. Make sure to check out Rich's new product, Armor Gel. Rich, it's always a pleasure having you on the show. Armor up and stay up your game. For more information, go to richfranklin.com and Rich's Twitter at richfranklin. Always a pleasure having you on the show, Rich.
Hey, thanks for having me on, guys. It's always fun doing an interview with you guys.
And there you have it, guys. Rich Franklin, what a legend. Now, this week in MMA, this weekend, just action-packed with all these MMA events. You had Bellator and Victor and UFC 184. Obviously, all those events had really cool moments. Me and Cass want to break down to you some of the stuff that really stood out to us. Kicking it off with Bellator 134, Cass, British Invasion. I'm not a big fan of these gimmicky names, but overall, there were some big matchups on this card, and there were some big names on this card as well. King Mo was on our show previously, talked about his fight with Cheick Konga. There was a title in line. Paul Daly was on the card. There was a lot of great fights, but we didn't have that much time to talk about it, so I'd like to kick it off from the Paul Daly fight. When you saw that Paul Daly was fighting in Bellator again, what did you think? Did you expect something explosive to happen?
Yeah, I pretty much expect that every time Paul Daly fights, and he was obviously supposed to be fighting for the welterweight title originally. Champion got injured, so there he was fighting Andre Santos, and it was a good fight. It was a crazy good fight. Before we get into it, I really just want to say, if you haven't caught Bellator 134, definitely watch it. British Invasion was awesome. I don't mind these gimmicks, to be honest. I know Bellator is kind of like, they've got that Spike TV vibe. They're really capitalizing on those ex-pro wrestling fans, and they've got that like Spike TV, where man kind of like feel to it. I like it. And this fight, really good war. Both guys were in trouble in a lot of moments. You didn't get that big KO from Paul Daly, but what you got was an awesome war. And man, Andre Santos, a lot of respect to that guy. What did you think of the fight, Dennis?
Yeah, Casper, I agree with you. It was a great fight. Something that was really interesting, though, Paul Daly, obviously, I think he expected to go in there and knock out Santos. Santos, obviously, for those who don't know him, a really talented grappler. Not exactly the most exciting and the best striker. So it was one of those kind of grappler versus striker matchups. Santos really showed us that he could get Daly down. There were a couple of moments where he was able to put him down. I think it's one of those things where I think Daly's really going to learn from this fight as he goes on in the division. Who knows, even if one day he comes back to the UFC, that's always going to be an area that he's going to have to work on, getting up off the bottom and avoiding these guys taking him down. There was a moment in that fight, Cass, and I don't know, I want to get your opinion. I forget what round it was in, but Paul Daly was sort of towering over Santos, landing punches. I actually thought the fight could have been stopped. I feel like if a guy like Herb Dean or Big John was there, it would have been stopped already. Obviously, good that they let it go on because Santos wasn't too hurt. Overall, I thought the fight was pretty good. I think Paul just needs to tighten up his takedown defense. I think maybe Santos really sort of got some eyeballs on him in this fight, and more people are going to start asking about him now. But overall, I thought it was a good fight. But what did you think, Cass? Did you think there was a possibility the fight could have been stopped in that occurrence?
I think with this fight, with Santos, you saw that he was a warrior throughout the whole thing, and I wouldn't have exactly complained if the fight was stopped, but it's one of those things that sort of runs into that unknown territory. Like, there's a lot of fights that you look at and you think, oh, that could have gotten stopped, or that was a little bit of an early stoppage. What if? You're never really gonna know. The main thing is, I'm glad that in this fight we did get to find out what would have happened, if it didn't get stopped early, and it wasn't, and therefore we got a great war. And, with Dan Miragliotta, he's really good with letting fights go predominantly. That's the main thing. I'm glad that it continued and it was a good war.
Yeah, there's actually a few stoppages that I wanted to talk to you about from this weekend's fight. So we'll get to them later on. But yeah, definitely one of those situations that could have gone either way. Now, I mentioned this man before, Cass. He's always coming onto the show, King Mo. I think you and me were both surprised when we saw that he'd be fighting Cheick Konga. What did you, before we get into this, what did you expect from King Mo in this fight against Cheick?
I think this is going to be a much tougher fight than King Mo made it sound. When he was on our show, he was very sort of, it's another fight. I'm just going to get in there. I'm going to do my thing. We asked him a little about things in terms of game plan. What are you going to do if Cheick Konga tries to put you up against the cage? What are you going to do about his striking? And none of those things seemed to faze King Mo. And I thought Cheick Konga was a dangerous guy. He's got knockout power. He's very long. I mean, he's fought guys like Cain Velasquez and, a lot of the, Matt Mitrione and Travis Browne, a lot of guys in the UFC. And I just thought with Muhammad Lawal, with his how do I put this? You know, he's inconsistent. You know, the last few guys that he's fought, they haven't been the biggest names. They've been tough guys, but they haven't been the biggest names. And Lawal isn't exactly a knockout machine either. And Czech Congo has really been improving his wrestling for years and years and years now. So I thought this may have been a very tough fight for King Mo. What did you think going into this one?
Yeah, you know, I agreed with you. And my thoughts on the fight were, you know, why is King Mo in this octagon against Czech Congo? I mean, Congo, you know, to me looked absolutely massive compared to King Mo. And it was one of those situations where I was almost a little bit, not upset, but disappointed because King Mo, you know, a long time ago, years and years ago, you know, this guy was one of the hot, you know, sort of up and coming things in MMA. Everybody always wanted to see him go into the UFC, you know, see him compete. And he did take a different road. He decided to go into TNA and Bellator. I just don't know if it's really paying off for him. I just don't think it's smart for him to take fights against a guy like Czech Congo. The fight itself, I thought, wasn't very good. I mean, King Mo basically used his wrestling and just, you know, sort of wrestled Congo for the whole fight, kept him down because he knew that he couldn't take those punches. I mean, it just wasn't an enjoyable fight for me to watch. And, you know, he finished and he said, oh, well, now, you know, now I can do title shots here and I can do title shots there. But I wouldn't want to see him in the heavyweight division, to be honest with you, Cass. You know, I just think it's awkward. Yeah, you can go into it, but you just, you know, you can't do what you want to do in that division. You're very small compared to a lot of these guys. You know, I'd rather see King Mo focus on the light heavyweight division and the middleweight division. I know it's all about the paycheck for him. He mentions that he's doing it for the money, but I don't know. It's weird. I don't like it. I didn't feel good about this fight, and the fight itself, it just didn't turn out that well. I don't know. What did you think of it, Cass?
Yeah, with this fight, Dennis, I mean, I enjoyed it for the sake that it was a bit of a freak show fight. You had Czech Congo, who played Goliath, and then you had King Mo, who played David, and I enjoyed that aspect of it. I enjoyed, I guess, King Mo's game planning. It wasn't the most exciting fight, but to be honest, I really thought that Czech Congo had a lot of the advantages there. So I enjoyed the aspect of the fact that King Mo was able to out-wrestle Czech Congo, and he was probably the most, I guess, disciplined King Mo we've seen in a long time. I just found it very, very disappointing in terms of Czech Congo, because I remember back in the day when Brock Lesnar came to the UFC and Czech Congo was talking about how it's disappointing to see him get that title shot so quickly, and then you've got Czech Congo, I feel like he's been sort of, you know, chewed up and spit out by the MMA machine. He didn't do that great in the UFC, and then here he is finding himself in Bellator, and he's not really doing that great either. You know, he's got quite a few losses on his record. It's kind of like, wow, when you lose to a light heavyweight, regardless if it's King Mo or anyone else, where do you go from there? He's not going to be fighting for a title anytime soon. King Mo, he's a guy who's a great fighter, but he's a beatable guy. We saw him get knocked out by Emmanuel Newton, you know, takes risks. Just in general, a lot of things. And it's pretty much exactly what he said on our show, and he said it multiple times on our show. His claim is that MMA is not a real sport because they want people to fight a certain way and exciting. Whereas with King Mo, he sees it as, look, like within the NBA and the NFL, if you win, you win. So his goal is out there not necessarily to be entertaining, but just to win fights. But I do agree with you in the sense that it wasn't the most exciting fight.
The thing is, it's like, what does, you know, Congo get out of this? Like he said, he loses to a light heavyweight. He's one of the more recognizable names in the brand. So they were using him in that kind of co-main event spot to verse these heavyweights. Now he loses against a light heavyweight. It's a disappointing fight. You know, both guys just get nothing out of it. People think King Mo didn't look that great, and they're disappointed with him. People think Congo didn't look that good. I don't know. I just don't think the booking's very smart with that one, personally.
You know, I will say one thing, because you say the booking is not very good. Just on a positive note with Bellator, I really like the presentation in terms of the huge, well, not necessarily huge arena, but the big stage and the colors. And when fighters are coming out, you've got like almost Titantrons and, you know, just in general, the lighting and all that. So what did you think of that, Dennis?
Well, Casper, I thought that it looked pretty good. I thought that sometimes certain companies, they go overboard with that kind of stuff, and Bellator did a really good job. There was the screens in the background as the fighters were fighting. I thought that the footage looked great. I thought the lighting looked great. Overall, I think they did a very, very good job. If it's Scott Coker, you know, in the back there, sort of making those minor changes and making it seem a little bit more professional and, you know, making it feel like more like one of those top leagues that you're watching, then I'll tell you what, he's doing a good job, and he did a very, very good job with this one. I don't know how much of an effect it does generally on a lot of fans, but I think these are the kind of stepping stones that you need towards building a company, and competing with guys like the UFC who have amazing, presentation skills, and people just expect that whenever they watch any kind of MMA now. I think it's something that the WWE did with their competition. It's hard to watch indie wrestling and stuff like that because the WWE just do an amazing job of their presentation, and that's what the UFC does. So it's good to see that Scott knows that that's one of the areas they need to improve on, and he's put in some really good changes.
Yeah, I definitely think that Scott Coker got written all over it. It really does feel kind of like a Strikeforce 2.0 because you saw a lot of those things happening in Strikeforce, and now it looks like Scott Coker's kind of continuing with that tradition. And I think it's very important to make a distinction between your small events and your big events. You've got these Bellator events that aren't necessarily the big ones, and then you've got what Scott Coker calls, I think it's called the Big Tent events. And British Invasion was one of them. So it's good to see that the product looks a lot more alive and cleaner and bright. If you look to some of the old Bellator shows, they looked a little bit darker and not quite so flash. I think, and like you said, it's hard sometimes to do those kinds of things and not make it too cheesy and cartoony. Sometimes when I see like Chet Congo's name and then you see King Mo's name and the font's a little bit different, in the future I think you're going to see everything kind of look like a total package. All the names, everything's going to have the same font. But at the moment, they're trying to usher in those casual fans, people that watch Spike TV because it's a man's channel, and I think a lot of them enjoy that. So kudos to them. I thought it looked really good. I thought the entrances looked really good. I like watching, say, King Mo and Chet Congo enter, and then you've got videos of them playing in the background, showing their highlights. I mean, that's just something nice for the crowd. It's going to get them excited. Let's talk about the next fight. It's the main event: Liam Aguirre, Emmanuel Newton. Dennis, what are your thoughts?
Went into this fight after, watching King Mo fight and wasn't feeling a little bit down from the last fight, but sort of not expecting much from this one. This fight was just, to me, it was just a really, really fun fight. Sure, Liam Aguirre, he was in certain positions where it seemed like possibly he could have finished Newton. He didn't really maintain his position. But there was some rounds there, man, where if there was another 20, 30 seconds, I think Liam would have beaten him decisively. And Newton, Newton was in there to the very last second. He was throwing great punches on the ground as well, doing great things. And there was this one point in between rounds where his corner showed him, I believe it was a picture of his daughter to keep him motivated. Overall, to me, this was a lot like the Stephan Bonner sort of
Forrest Griffin.
Forrest Griffin, that's right. The Stephan Bonner Forrest Griffin fight. Had one of those great feelings about it. Both guys were just going for it. I think it really, there were a lot of great fights on the event, but I think it really left everybody going home on a positive note. It was a great, great title fight. I thought there were so many great things happening from there. I don't know. I'll tell you what, if I was a guy that didn't watch Bellator usually, if I didn't watch Bellator weekly or monthly, I'd become a fan from that fight. Both guys really deserve a lot of props. They really went out there and delivered. In a fight, that could have been boring or they could have just taken advantage of certain positions. They just went for it. The reversals happened, but, it was very, very exciting. What about you, Cass? What did you think about it?
Yeah, absolutely loved it. I mean, Liam Aguirre was the guy to dethrone Emmanuel Newton. A lot of people were picking it. Newton's one of those guys. People are often scratching their head at, how he became champion, and he wins fights that he's not supposed to win. And he's sort of getting to that position where people are starting to believe in him. And I'm not taking anything away from him. The guy obviously works hard, and he's got a lot of talent, but just on paper, people consistently bet against him. And then you got Liam Aguirre, who, had, I think, like 9 first-round finishes or something like that. But he was undefeated, beating a lot of guys by submission and KO, a lot of early stoppages. So smart money would say if he's going to win, he's going to win early. And if Emmanuel Newton is going to win, he's going to weather the storm and win in rounds, 3, 4, 5. Just the amount of submission attempts by Liam Aguirre, to me, it was just amazing. It's one thing to do that in, say, the first round, the second round, but he was literally doing it the whole fight. And it wasn't just the fact that he was throwing those attempts up. It was the fact that Emmanuel Newton was obviously, not getting caught and powering through them and, defending. I mean, how many triangles were there? How many armbars were there? It was insane. As soon as it hit the ground, Liam Aguirre was going for something. His legs were constantly around Emmanuel Newton's, head and neck, and he was just going for so many things. I don't know that it's something that you'd be able to get away with in the UFC. I think in the UFC light heavyweight division, even though people say that it's a thin division, I don't think that kind of stuff would necessarily happen in there. I think both guys would would get beaten. I know Liam McGeary was training with Daniel Cormier for John Jones because he's obviously a very tall, lanky sort of guy. But man, honestly, like you said, Dennis, it was a great fight to cap off the event, especially coming off King Mo versus Chet Congo, which not a lot of people enjoyed. It was a great fight. I think it's an early contender for Fight of the Year. And, of course, congratulations to Liam McGeary for becoming the new Bellator champion.
Yeah, and it was razor close. It's one of those kind of fights where they can revisit it and do a rematch. And if somebody asked me and they said, Dennis, I want to check out Bellator, I haven't checked anything out, I'd say, hey, man, go check out this title fight. It's great. And I agree with you. In the UFC, you could not get away with the majority of the stuff that those guys did. But it was one of those fun fights that sort of in a category of its own, Cass, where, you turn it on and you sit around with your friends and you see a whole bunch of crazy stuff happen. And it's something great for the casual fan. So in that regard, the guys really, really put on such a great show. I think both of them should be proud. And, if I'm Scott Coker, I'm happy. These are two Bellator guys that are really gaining a lot of notoriety. And that's a great thing.
Yeah, I want to jump to UFC 184, but before we do, I just want to mention Invicta 11 happened over the weekend. If you didn't catch it, here's pretty much the main thing you need to know. Chris Cyborg made her return, defended her featherweight title, and destroyed Charmaine Tweet in 46 seconds. That pretty much ties up with some of the things we're going to be talking about for UFC 184. But let's get into it. What's the first fight that you want to talk about at UFC 184, Dennis? What's the one that sticks out to you?
Well, the one that sticks out to me was this Mark Munoz fight. But before we actually talk about that, I actually wanted to talk about with you, Cass, Kid Yamamoto. That fight was stopped, obviously, because of eye pokes. If you guys didn't watch it, it was no contest due to the accidental eye pokes. What did you think about Big John's work in that fight? What did you think about how that was all handled, Cass?
Great question. I think Big John is a guy who understands the fighters, and with Roman Salazar, he obviously had a bad eye injury. I think most people watching that are a little bit desensitized to it because you get so many eye pokes in so many fights. It's just a regular occurrence, and a lot of the times the doctor comes in, and I know there's this one doctor in Australia, we joke about him looking like Santa Claus, and we're like, what's he doing in here? Does he hate fights? Like, is he like... Does he go to his friends like, oh, guys, I'm going to the UFC this weekend. I hate fights. I'm going to ruin them all. He's like the Grinch of fighting, and he always stops fights and this and that. Or, he's always like worried about it. So I think Big John McCarthy understands that a lot of doctors, look, they've done years and years of school and things like that. They know the risks. Big John McCarthy is more understanding of the fighter. So Big John's always going to kind of try and sway the doctor to continue fighting. And I didn't know that you can get 5 minutes for taking an eye poke. I didn't actually know that. I thought it was for groin attacks. I thought with eye pokes, it's something like, you can bring in a doctor to sort of kill time a little bit and squeeze out that 5 minutes. But look, I like what Big John was doing. He was trying to get Roman to continue fighting. I don't think he understood how bad Roman's, eye poke was. What did you think, Dennis?
Yeah, it's interesting because if you get 5 minutes for eye pokes, John Jones, some of his fights might go for 40 or 50 minutes. But I was going to say that with this occurrence, I agree with you. I think it was one of those things where Big John is so used to these doctors coming in who aren't used to really fights. They'll try and call it straight away. So he was sort of thinking that he was on the side of Roman with this one. While at the same time, I don't think he realized that Roman really couldn't continue fighting.
Yeah.
He said, can you see out of your eye? Roman said, no, I can't see. And then he goes, well, do you want to continue fighting? The fact is, if a guy can't see out of his eye, he can't fight. And maybe Roman was one of these guys where he's too embarrassed to go, hey, John, my eye's messed up. I can't continue fighting. So it felt to me like he was giving Big John the signals of, all right, can you please call this fight? This is sort of an embarrassing moment for me. I can't keep fighting. And all the fans around there, they hate it when fights get called off. I just think Big John should have read that a little bit better. As soon as Roman said, I can't see, he said this a number of times, I think Big John should have just taken the message and called the fight. I think he dragged it out a little bit too long and caused Roman to have a bit of an awkward moment. I don't think any fighter wants to give up like that. And I don't think Roman wanted to go out and say that, I don't want to fight anymore. I think he was sort of hoping Big John would just call it. But overall, I like the fact that he gave Roman time.
I think you're right, and I didn't think about it like that too much till you mentioned it. I think with Big John, he's so used to fighters wanting to continue. I don't think he expected this. At the same time, I'm a very black and white kind of guy. You say it to me, if I ask you, do you want to continue fighting, and someone says, I can't see, that's not an answer. That doesn't even register with me. It's a yes or it's a no. Every other answer, I don't even hear. So I understand where Big John was coming from. And, sometimes guys, they don't really say what they're thinking. They might be like, oh, I can't see, and this and that. And it's like, okay, but what does that mean? Do you want to continue fighting? And they'll be like, oh, yeah, I want to continue fighting. It's like, well, okay, which is it? Is it yes or is it no? So I understand what Big John was doing. Before we get into sort of the Mark Munoz fight, I just want to also mention Derek Lewis versus Juan Potts. Right, this is Juan Potts's. This is Derek Lewis's comeback basically after losing to Matt Mitrione. The Black Beast was destroyed by the Beige Beast, and then he was given Juan Potts, which I think was a fight given to him on a silver platter. Juan Potts had a lot of trouble with strikers. He's gotten really recently knocked out by Anthony Hamilton, our very own Saul Palele. So to me, actually, I can't believe I didn't bet on this fight. I don't bet in general, but I probably should have put down money on it. Juan Potts, he didn't look great in this fight. I don't have anything against the guy. But for a guy who's a black belt in judo and a brown belt in jiu-jitsu, he spent a lot of the fight either getting tossed around, thrown around, or getting swept. He didn't look that great. And as far as the striking, it wasn't really even competitive. To me, it was a matter of time before he was going to get knocked out. And you saw Derek Lewis at times he was standing over him having a rest. There was one point where he was sitting on him in full mount, literally just biding his time, taking a breather. At one point, he was standing over him. I think he was holding his leg, looking like he was going to engage, but you could clearly see he was literally just catching his breath, taking a breather. Even the commentators, mentioned, Joe Rogan said it. So I just wanted to mention that really quickly. It sucks for Juan Potts. He's had quite a lot of fights, but I think in terms of his career in the UFC, I think he's going to get let go. I don't think we're going to see Juan Potts in the UFC again. Maybe he'll go out and get a few more fights, but I think his time in the UFC is done for now.
Yeah, absolutely. And, the Black Beast, always interesting to see what happens with him. So I agree with you, Cass. I think the UFC are just trying to build him back up. Now, the next big fight, this was touted as the main event of the prelims. Mark Munoz is making his comeback. What did you think? Did you think that Munoz was going to be able to pull this one off? He had a couple of tough fights, obviously, Lyoto Machida, Gegard Mousasi, not pushovers by any means. Did you think Munoz was going to turn it all around and get back into the win section tonight?
Well, here he was going up against the guy who recently won Battlegrounds MMA's tournament, which is a big deal. But at the same time, he hasn't been fighting UFC caliber guys for a long time. He hasn't been fighting in the UFC since 2008, and when he was there last, he lost twice in a row. So it was going to be an interesting one. Can he handle the type of caliber that they have of fighters in the UFC? And with Mark Munoz, He's been on a very, declining slope. His doctor recently told him that he shouldn't continue fighting. And of course, like a true warrior, Mark Munoz disregarded that advice, and here he is continuing to fight. Yeah, like you said, Lyoto Machida, Gegard Mousasi, those are two guys, the very top of the middleweight division, and Lyoto's fought for the title. Gegard, who knows, he may very well be fighting for the title at one point. Ryan was honestly a step down in competition, and Mark Hunt didn't look very good at all. It was meant to be Mark Hunt's big comeback. The story at the end of that fight wasn't the comeback of Mark Hunt. It was the comeback of Rowan, a guy who hadn't been in the UFC for 6 years, who most people forgot. He got on the mic afterwards and he's like, I'm back. And honestly, the crowd didn't respond because they didn't know who he was. I felt bad for the guy. It reminded me of that Paul Buntello thing when he got on the mic after one of his fights. But yeah, it's a bit of a sad thing for Mark Munoz, and you could see it in his face. It was one of the many faces at UFC 184 that was filled with disappointment. What did you think, Dennis?
Yeah, it was one of those things where you could say, look, a guy's taken too many punches to his head, and we'll be talking about Josh Koscheck a little bit later, but you could say that it's his body deteriorating. With this one, Mark really got dominated in the grappling department, something that we haven't seen in a really, really long time. I don't know if he underestimated. I'm going to pronounce this incorrectly. Rowan, is it, Cass?
Rowan, yeah.
Rowan, I don't know if you underestimated Rowan or not, but it was a very, very crisp submission that he got him with. I don't know what to do with Munoz. I don't think the UFC are going to cut him just yet. I think they might give him one last chance. I'd like to see him get given one last chance after everything that he's done in MMA. But yeah, it was very difficult to watch it because you expect Munoz to have a grappling advantage, and I just think he got taken off guard by Rowan. And Rowan, he's versed some big guys. He's lost against them, but a fun fact was that he actually fought Anderson Silva back in 2002. He also fought John Fitch at UFC Fight Night 10 in 2007. So the guy's had some big fight experience. I wonder if he's just coming into his own. Mentioned the press conference the post-fight press conference that he's going down to welterweight. So interested to see if he's finally coming to his own and if he's going to go on one last run in the UFC.
Well, that's interesting. Yeah, he's been going between welterweight and middleweight for a number of years now, so we'll see how he does. In terms of the finish, it really reminded me of Kelvin Gastelum's last finish against Jake Ellenberger. Very similar situation, made a very slick transition, and then put in that rear naked choke very, very quickly. And like you said, yeah, Mark Munoz, at the end of the day, he is a good wrestler. He was the wrestling coach, I think the wrestling coach at Black House for a long time, training Anderson Silva and Lyoto Machida. So to see him get out grappled like this, I agree. I don't think he saw it coming, but at the same time, in the UFC and being a fight, you have to see these things coming, otherwise you lose. And Mark Munoz really did lose in highlight reel fashion. That was absolutely brutal. And I think you wanted to talk about referee stoppages. This one was one that went way, way too long. I think it was Eve Levine who was refereeing this one. And man, Munoz was out. That one could have been stopped way, way earlier. What did you think, Dennis?
Yeah, and Rowan had to tell him. I mean, in the post-fight press conference, he spoke about the fact that he felt him go, and he was telling the ref, and the ref, gave it another few seconds. Now, to the people listening at home who haven't been, choked unconscious before, those few seconds, they can actually damage your brain. So the longer, after you go out, the longer you're out, the number of seconds that you're out, it could potentially really damage your brain. I don't think it was long enough for him to have any serious damage, but a guy like Eve, who's been around the sport for so long and with such a simple choke that everybody knows and how tight he had it, I don't know why it took him so long to do. I guess everybody slips up once in a while, but yeah, a late stoppage nevertheless.
And just with Mark, I think they'll keep him around for one more shot because they've got that UFC Philippines card coming up. And obviously being the Filipino wrecking machine, it'd surprise me if he wasn't on that card. Then again, it is coming up soon. So I don't know. If he does get that suspension from the Athletic Commission, he may not even be able to train. What's next, Dennis? What's another fight that you want to talk about from UFC 184? What's one that stands out to you?
Well, in the back, you saw this man having a chat to his coach, Brock Lesnar, Tony Ferguson, someone that you and me, Cass, have been looking at as an up-and-comer in the division. Never ceases to impress us. Amazing jiu-jitsu, always improving his striking, someone that's always looking hungry. He was versing Gleison Tibau, a guy that's been on a big win streak, looking amazing, huge for the division. A lot of people saying this could be, his run for the title. And you saw him put that amazing submission on him as well. What did you think of that fight, Cass? What did you think of Ferguson in this one?
Brilliant. Classic Ferguson. The guy takes big risks. He truly outclassed Gleison Tibau. I got to mention, though, with Gleison, I was just thinking to myself, like, man, it feels like I've just seen the guy fight. And yeah, he fought recently. He fought middle of January, and obviously he steps up as a last-minute replacement for Yancy Medeiros against Tony Ferguson. But definitely wasn't Gleison Tibau's night. I mean, he's been with the company for a long, long time, and even though he's found his stride recently, I still think Gleison Tibau is one of those guys that you won't exactly see him fighting for a title soon. He usually sort of has a few good fights, does decently, and then during a step up to competition, he usually falters a little bit. So I like the guy. In my opinion, he doesn't even always have the most exciting fights. You need a guy like Gleison Tibau. And he's not in danger of getting let go, of the company. He was on a 3-fight win streak prior. This one really derailed him. I mean, a win over Norman Park, that's a big deal. Norman's a good guy, there's no joke. But, man, I'm all aboard the Tony Ferguson train. This dude's really exciting. He's just one of those guys where as soon as he's announced on a card, I'm excited. I'm excited already.
Yeah, absolutely. Always improving, always hungry, always focused. I mean, always impressing everybody. And I agree with you. Tibau, it might have been a situation where he just got in there too soon, sometimes. And he's a bit older as well. I mean, He's not that old, but he's a bit older. Sometimes the body just can't handle that. He just looked flat. Really, he looked flat, and he got caught with that very nice punch from Tony across the ear there. And yeah, everybody gets caught, but it's a big risk for him, And I mean, I had a look at the reported paying, and T-Bow gets a good payout for showing up in the UFC because he's had so many fights. So maybe that's the reason why he took it. But at the same time, he did lose a lot of the momentum that he had behind him. So in hindsight, maybe it was too much of a risk for him. Maybe he should have sat that one out. But he's a warrior nevertheless for taking a fight with a guy like Tony.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk about the next fight. You had Alan Jabouin against our very own Richard Walsh. Richie started off really well in this fight. We saw great kicks. We had John Wayne Parr in his corner. Obviously, John Wayne Parr, huge hero in Australian combat sports. I think Alan, he kept his composure, but I think he didn't expect Richie's kicks to be that good. And, Richie was keeping a lot of pressure on him. And then, boom, that elbow out of nowhere. Beautiful elbow. What did you think, Dennis?
Yeah, Richie looked really good, and he's a big guy. I don't know. He's a really, really big guy. Like, he's got one of those frames where it's just strength. He looks like such a strong guy. He looked really, really good. He looked composed. I think, Alan at one point of the fight sort of didn't expect Richard to be so aggressive. That elbow came out of nowhere, and if Richard's listening to this, because #1 Aussie MMA podcast, don't feel too down. Everybody gets caught. My issue with the fight, Cass, and I don't know what your opinion is going to be on this. I'll give you mine first. Is I feel like it was stopped too early. Everybody was saying Big John did a really good job. He saw Richard sort of go down while he was standing up, but I'd like to see it let go for a little bit longer. I wanted to see what happened after that. He sort of bounced back. I wanted the fight to go on for another 10 seconds and see what happens. Now, I know there's a danger of fighters getting caught, but it was too early for me. It just felt too early. A lot of people said Big John did a great job. I didn't think so. What did you think of it?
See, I'm going to have to disagree. See, as soon as the fight was stopped, I was looking at it thinking, ooh, was that too early? And I was like, you know what? I'll wait to see the replay to judge. And once I saw the replay, I thought, you know what? I think Richie was out of it. I think the only thing that kept him up, honestly, was the cage. And you know what, maybe if the cage wasn't there, maybe it would have been a different story. You see guys often fall down and they wake up from the fall. Or it might have been Alan Jobin, getting on top of him and finishing with ground and pound. Or maybe we would have seen Richie tie him up. I don't know. But the way the fight ended, I think it was a just stoppage. I think Richie was out. And honestly, if Big John didn't jump in there, I think he would have suffered more damage. When I watched it in real time, I thought, wow, Big John was in there really quickly. But upon seeing the replay and seeing Richie's face, him being an Aussie, hey, I want to see our guys get a fair go. But unbiased, I think it was a good stoppage.
It was one of those things there, you just mentioned, maybe this would have happened, maybe that would have happened. I just wanted to see what was going to happen, and I don't know. It's just too early to me. It didn't feel good. And I guess people are going to listen to this and say I'm anti-John McCarthy, big John McCarthy, but I'm a big fan of his. Just didn't feel good to me.
Oh, look, we've had John McCarthy on the show before. We had a great chat with him. No, look, my thing is the ifs and the what ifs, I think would have been different if the cage wasn't there. Because the way Richie fell, he fell against the cage, and I think that's what propped him up. But because the cage was there and because he was out of it, even when he put his hand out as if to do something to Alan, it seemed a little bit, I don't want to say half-hearted because that's not fair. I know Richie had his heart in there, but it didn't look like a guy who was alert. I think he looked really out of it. I think he was, out on his feet. I think it was a decent stoppage. Let's talk about the next fight. Jake Ellenberger versus Josh Koscheck. This was basically like a loser leaves town fight. Both guys weren't the same fighters that they were a few years ago. Josh Koscheck obviously had a big layoff. He took time to go out and do things like hunting and fishing and really just enjoys life. And I was reading an interview with him, and he was saying how he's fixed up a lot of things. He feels a lot better, a lot healthier, and it seems like the trend. There's been a few times recently where guys have retired and they've just taken way too much damage, like a Chris Lieben and guys like that. And then you see guys like Josh Koscheck and other fighters who just take the time to sort of go away and take a while to rest up and heal their bodies and come back. What did you think of this fight, Dennis?
I thought it was going to be an interesting fight. I expected a lot more from Josh Koscheck. And when I saw him in this fight, I really thought, you know what? I don't think he should be in this octagon. I mean, wrestling-wise, he looked really, really good. He looked on point. His wrestling looked as good as it ever has been. But he just can't stand and take punches. And he doesn't want to either. He didn't have any confidence in his striking. He just didn't look like the same Josh Koscheck. It was a little bit difficult to watch. And I understand it. He's taken a lot of damage to the head, and maybe his game plan was I'll avoid all of the striking. But Jake Ellenberger's striking, it didn't look that amazing tonight. Like he had some good moments, but he wasn't, he wasn't a Johnny Hendricks. He wasn't throwing these huge punches that, would usually make the old Josh Koscheck of old in his prime, sort of startle like that and run away and sort of just try and grapple him. I just didn't think Josh looked good at all. And with Jake Ellenberger, he looked pretty good, but again, didn't look as good as he once did. But I think this win might give him a bit of confidence, and we'll see what they do next with them. I know in the post-fight press conference, he said that he'd like to get in there straight away. That choke as well with the foaming from the mouth. Yeah, man, that was crazy. That's not something you really want to see happen to a fighter. But, something across my mind is, it could have been a lot worse for Josh Koscheck. He could have gotten possibly knocked out, more head damage. So even though he foamed from the mouth, it didn't look like it was going to be a lasting health issue for him. So that's something I'm happy about. Cass, you hear these two guys, loser leaves town. What do you think? What do you think happens in this fight? Who did you have winning it?
Oh, man, it was too close to pick. I really didn't know. Obviously, like you said, Jake Ellenberger, he's looked really, really good in the past. People talking about him years ago saying that he might be the guy to beat GSP. It was him and Rick Story and guys like that. And obviously, he hasn't had the greatest, streak recently. And then you got Josh Koscheck, who was in a very similar position. I mean, they might have even had the same amount of fights lost. And with Jake Ellenberger, a lot of them were finishes as well. But again, you could sort of argue that both guys were versing very top-level guys. You had Jake Ellenberger versing, he lost to Kelvin Gastelum, Robbie Lawler, and Rory McDonald. And then in Josh Koscheck, you had guys like Johnny Hendricks, Tyron Woodley, and Robbie Lawler again. I wasn't going to be stupid enough to pick a fight, to pick a winner here. I will say, with Jake Ellenberger, he's striking. I was actually very impressed. I think it took him, a few seconds to sort of get in there and adjust. And I think once he sort of relaxed a little bit and built his confidence, because it's different to sort of be training with Edmund Taverdi and in training be doing really well, as opposed to when you step in there on fight night. Now you've got a live opponent, and so many things are on the line. And I think the mental aspect is another big thing as well. I don't know how Jake handles it, and I'd love to get his opinion next time he's on the show. But I know if I was a fighter, I may do great in training, and then I'd get in there on fight night and think to myself, oh man, like if I lose, there's so much on the line. I think once he got comfortably to look really good, we saw him very calm, employing the jab a lot. I will say that my one knock on Jake Ellenberger, even though I was impressed with his boxing, he has said to us many times on the show that in terms of pressure, that's where he doesn't do well. Against Rory McDonald, he didn't do well because he let Rory dictate the pace, and he let him, Rory didn't even put the pressure on him, but Jake said he doesn't do well going backwards. Now, even though he put pressure on Josh, I don't think he put enough of it. I think towards the end, he was looking to counter-strike. So, impressed with his striking itself. I'm just curious what the game plan was for Josh and whether that was originally his game plan. Because he said it a lot of times. He said it against Kelvin Gastelum. I'm going to push the pace. I'm going to go in there and things like that. And I don't think he did. I think he stalled a little bit and he allowed himself to get pressured. With Josh Koscheck, I think he looked impressive for the first, say, couple of minutes. He got that takedown. He was being smart. I saw him getting that jab in there. But as soon as he took a few shots to the face, I think Josh Koscheck wilted a little bit. I think the confidence disappeared. You saw him touching that left eye, the one that GSP, battered and broke his orbital socket. And you could hear the commentators. It's like all energy just completely left them. You could hear Joe Rogan and Mike Goldberg. They were commentating with pity. All they were saying, it's like they were trying to be really nice, not to say bad things about Josh Koscheck. But I think a lot of people watching that fight were a little bit saddened to see Josh Koscheck go from where he used to be to where he is now, getting dominated like that, and really didn't look like he had a fighting chance. It looked like, to me, this fight kind of seemed like impending doom for Josh Koscheck. And just a quick note, I find it interesting because when Josh Koscheck fought GSP at UFC, I think it was 124, GSP said something. It was a backhanded compliment. He said, Josh is good and this and that, but when I beat him, he's not going to know what to do. He's going to look at his career and he's going to have to reassess himself, and he's not going to know what to do because he's lost to the same guy twice in a row. And where do you go after something like that? And it's crazy because I don't think anyone would have picked that GSP was going to injure him the way he did, but it's exactly what he said. Since then, it's basically been downhill for Josh Koscheck. So, just something interesting that I wanted to point out.
Yeah, absolutely. Some great points made there, Cass. Now, the next fight the co-main event. We had Raquel Pennington on the show last episode. We had a chat to her, and she told us, Cass, she said, one of the ways that she'd want to win is by knocking Holly Holm out, because nobody expects her to do something like that. She really wanted to hang in there, standing wise with Holly Holm, and show what she's made of. This co-main event fight, a lot of people gave Holly the favor, the advantage over Raquel. Didn't really give Raquel much of a chance. Going into this one, Cass, what did you think? Did you think it was going to be hands down Holly Holm?
No, not necessarily. I mean, she was obviously a big favorite, and I was watching the countdown. I know with the countdowns, there's so much hyperbole, and I love it. I love the presentation and everything, but I don't trust anything I hear in the countdowns. And I know Raquel Pennington, she's a real gamer. She likes to get in there. She likes to brawl. And hey, I mean, against Ashley Evans-Smith, I mean, she was losing that fight till she got that bulldog choke. So I really didn't know what was going to happen. What did you think of the fight itself, Dennis?
I was absolutely amazed, at Raquel Pennington's improvement on with her striking. She really did a great job. There were a lot of moments where she landed some good shots on Holly. She had, at one time, she knocked Holly down for a very brief second. She was in there to the very last second. The other thing that she brought with her was a lot of heart. She may not be technically the best fighter out of those two. And also, I must say, Holly Holm, she was a lot longer than Raquel was. Almost looked like they were in two different weight classes. And Holly laid it on her. She had a lot of great kicks, a lot of great combinations. Looked a little bit timid, looked a little bit. I don't want to say that she was, doubting anything, but she was a little bit nervous. First time in the UFC, but she still threw a lot of great stuff in Raquel, and Raquel took it, went forward, pushed the pace, landed some great shots on Holly. I think even though Raquel lost that fight, I think that fight did a lot more for Raquel, than any of her other wins in her career, because I think a lot of people saw Raquel, as, somebody with a lot of heart, somebody who's approving, and, they were impressed with it. It was a pretty close decision, 29-28 to Holly Holm, and 29-28 to Raquel. One person scored at 30-27 to Holly Holm, which I disagree with, but doesn't matter. But overall, I was really impressed with Raquel. I think that I'm interested to see what happens in the next fight, but hopefully this gives us some confidence. With Holly, she's someone that I think needs a few fights before she fights Ronda. I think Dana White said the same thing in the post-fight press conference. He's just not going to throw her in there straight away. She looked impressive in the sense that she stopped all takedowns, and she had a lot of great combinations, but I think it will take her a little bit of time to really settle into the UFC, and why not? Let's build her up a little bit before we give it to Ronda Rousey, because Ronda Rousey's looking amazing, and, you wouldn't want Holly Holm to sort of just get walked through. So somebody that definitely has a lot of potential, but, I expected this from Holly Holm. I think a lot of people just expected her to walk in and just knock Raquel out, but I thought she might deal with some of these nerves and getting used to the octagon. I don't know. What did you think, Cass? What did you think of the fight?
Yeah, I pretty much agree with everything you said. I think this one was, you summed it up perfectly. This one was a really good fight for Raquel in the sense that it's going to elevate her. She was in the co-main event. Originally, she wasn't going to be. So here's her, making her mark. And she went up against the girl who many people think is going to be fighting Ronda Rousey next. And she didn't look bad. She didn't look bad at all. I was impressed by Raquel's I guess her honesty in honoring her word that she said she was going to stand up, stand and bang, stand and brawl with Holly Holm, and that's exactly what she did. You didn't see her spamming takedowns as soon as the fight started. She really did stand up with Holly Holm, and she didn't look like shit doing it. The other thing is with Holly Holm, like you said, she's got such a long reach. I don't think Raquel really did anything wrong. I think she fought a good fight. It's just that Holly Holm was better. She was longer. And anytime Raquel went in to really, get in there, Holly Holm would just keep her back with those side kicks and things like that. I don't think there was much that Raquel Pennington could have done differently. Maybe catch those kicks. I still think she was fighting a better fighter, but I was really impressed with Holly Holm. Also, when Raquel knocked her down and then she ran over and punched her in the face, that looked like a really big shot. And Holly Holm not only ate it, but reversed the position. So I was really, really, really impressed by both girls. I don't understand, though, why the crowd was booing so hard afterwards. I thought it was a great fight. I don't understand why it was a split decision either. To me, I think Holly Holm won clearly. I think there was a clear win for Holly Holm. So, to me, that left a really bitter taste in my mouth. The crowd in the Staples Center booing. I don't know what they were booing. You had Holly Holm with a great victory. You had Raquel Pennington who put on a good performance as well, and I just found it really disrespectful for the crowd to boo. And I still don't understand to this day, hour, whatever, why they were booing. I thought the decision was ridiculous. It should have been a unanimous decision for Holly Holm. And then you've got Mickey Rourke in the crowd looking like someone's auntie, and this guy's waving his finger around. And I'm thinking, why are you waving your finger around? Your last fight was, a win against a paid-off homeless guy who was allegedly mentally ill in Russia of all places, and this guy's waving his finger with disapproval. I'm thinking, I don't know what you're disapproving, man, but you should probably be quiet. And so that to me was really strange. But all in all, I think both girls went out there and put on a great performance.
Yeah, I know. I absolutely agree with you, Cass. And, there was some celebrities there at the UFC 184. Mickey Rourke was one of them. That was one of those situations where I think as soon as people saw him on the monitor, all attention went away from the Ronda Rousey fight to what is happening with Mickey Rourke and why is he looking like this. I mean, oh, my God. With all due respect, the guy, and we saw a little bit in the countdown. I don't know if he got some new teeth in and he's going for this whole grandmother of Big Bird thing, but he's got this weird silver hair happening. Then you had Vin Diesel in the crowd, and this guy's wearing sunglasses late at night, indoors, right? What's he doing? What's going on with Vin Diesel? And somebody needs to remind this guy that all he's been doing is Fast and the Furious for the last 10 years. It was crazy to see. You had Mark Wahlberg walking around. Brock Lesnar apparently wouldn't sit down. Some guy was sitting behind him and was complaining about it on Twitter.
Really?
And, of course, people were reporting on Brock Lesnar all night long.
Yeah.
Brock Lesnar got up, got a water. Brock Lesnar just sneezed. Brock Lesnar reached into his pocket and pulled out some lint and blew it off his hand. There was updates. There were fights happening in the background, and someone was like, yeah, this guy wanted a KO. But Brock Lesnar just scratched his leg next to me. And people need to be reminded of this. Brock Lesnar is under contract with the WWE till WrestleMania. There was nothing that was going to happen there. He wore a three-piece suit. He looked smart. And also, he's doing this because he wants to get this bidding war happening for when his contract ends. People thought at the end of the event, either he was going to go in the cage and challenge Ronda Rousey in a super fight, which I would love to see, or he was going to go in the cage and talk about Coors Light again. It wasn't going to happen. The guy was just there to watch the fights. And the whole Twitter feed, everything that was happening online at that moment was, Brock Lesnar's here. A few people were writing on Twitter. One guy was talking about he was sitting across from Brock Lesnar. Ariel had a lot of great updates. Brock Lesnar is smiling. What could this mean for the UFC? With all due respect, Ariel's a great journalist, but it was, and you and me, Cass, we're huge Brock Lesnar fans, but can we please focus on the fights? I mean, it was crazy. And also, I think everybody, like I mentioned, was absolutely shocked after this Mickey Rourke thing was shown on TV, and people were trying to donate him money, figure out what was wrong with him, Google analyze him and figure out what kind of medical thing he had going on. It was a crazy thing. And I don't know what's going on with Mickey and his style and his furry jackets. Why is he always wearing furry jackets? What is it with him and furry jackets? I don't know.
Anyway. There's a group of foxes somewhere in the forest are all right, the son of a bitch is going down tonight. He's taken enough of our kind, and then the sheep are we're getting in on it as well. Yeah, I don't know. I will say one thing about Brock Lesnar, man. When I saw him on TV, man, he looked old. He looked bloody old, in my opinion. So, with all these rumors of him coming back to the UFC, there's a lot of question marks about how. I'm not even going to start. Nothing's been announced. Let's talk about the main event. You had Ronda Rousey versus Kat Zingano. I was watching the countdown, and I'll tell you what, man, I was touched. I was genuinely touched by Kat Zingano's story. It wasn't something that I wasn't familiar with, but I'd heard it all before, with her husband and things like that. And anytime I see Kat Zingano, I'm just like, man, she looks like the biggest sweetheart. You see her at any open workouts and things like that, and honestly, she used to smile a lot more back in the day, and you can see that she's still going through this thing, with her husband or the hardship in her life. And man, going to this fight, 2 years of waiting for this fight for it to end so quickly. What do you make of all this, Dennis? What did you think of the fight?
I think it was one of those things where, like you mentioned, you're watching this Kat Zingano story and the countdown, and you hear these horrible things that have happened to her. And I mean, these are things that would get a regular person down, so down that they wouldn't be able to fight. Something like that happens to a lot of people. That's something that will take them out of whatever they're doing for a long time. So she's just a hero for doing what she's doing. But it sort of takes you to a place personally, and I think this did it for me. I don't know if it did it for other people, but it sort of takes you to a place, sort of to a low point in your life, and reminds you what it felt like in that low point. I could really sort of sympathize with Kat. Nothing ever as bad as what's happened to her has happened to me, but it just makes you think about sort of what's the worst thing that's happened to me, and if I was in the same situation, how the hell would I come back and fight a chick like Ronda Rousey? And then you see the stuff with her and her son, and I mean, she looks like such a great mother. But it's also hard, and for a lot of people growing up in those homes with, single parents and stuff like that, it's just so hard for her. So all in all, her just getting to the stage was amazing. But the fight itself, she just made a terrible, terrible mistake. And that mistake was she went in there with emotion. She just had too much emotion when she went in there. And when she rushed Ronda and she was in that position where she could throw Ronda, do a hip throw to her, she took that. And she shouldn't have, because, that's Ronda's strong suit. Ronda is one of those fighters, no matter what you think, how angry she looks in the cage, she's strategic 100% all the way through. That transition and scramble that she did, I mean, she just blew my mind. It was a simple transition, caught Kat's arm, finished with that armbar, a simple armbar, that a lot of people finished on me in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I mean, Cassie and me have done Jiu-Jitsu and grappling. We've been caught with the arm and all the time. And, that was it. And that's 2 years of work. And Kat's standing there or sitting there on the ground, and you feel for her, It was one of those fights where everybody was shocked. A lot of people, felt really bad for Kat. And then Joe goes and speaks to her. I think if I'm in the production truck, I go, Joe, let's leave Kat away from this post-fight speech, because you're not going to get anything out of her. And, I'll be honest with you, I was impressed with Ronda, with her tenacity to use that scramble and beat Kat. But, what was Kat doing going in there and getting into a position like that with Ronda? My issue with these girls who are fighting Ronda is anybody going to bring strategy into the cage against Ronda Rousey? You can't get into a clinch with her. You can't get into a grappling match with her. You have to keep your distance, and you have to strike. Miesha Tate, she did a great job, but then she decided to try and take Ronda Rousey down. Girls need to be more strategic in women's MMA. We see it sometimes, but we don't see it all the time. Look at the guys like GSP. Look at the guys like John Jones. If you saw GSP run up to, I don't know, Johnny Hendricks or somebody else that he fought, like Carlos Condit, and do a flying knee and get into a position where he knew he was disadvantaged, he would never be a champion for that long. GSP was champion because he went in and he knew what the strengths were of his opponents, and then he kept away from those strengths. He figured out ways to beat him in those strengths. He was very strategic. So is John Jones. And what people need to realize when they face Ronda Rousey is she's got her strengths. You need to go in with a strategy to avoid her strengths, and then you have a shot. But if you clinch up with Ronda Rousey, if you find yourself in that position, that's her strong suit. That's how she's going to beat. That's how she's going to beat you. That's how she's beaten a lot of girls. So you got to come in with a strategy. And I was a little bit disappointed with Kat in that regard. But I mean, it all happens. Emotion's a big part of the sport. Cass, you saw the fight, all 14 seconds of it. They didn't need to cut it out for highlights. They could just play it from the start. What did you think of it all?
Man, I thought the Alexis Davis fight was impressive. I mean, this is even more impressive when you take into account the fact that Kat Zingano, she herself was undefeated as well, and people are talking about her being the biggest threat to Ronda Rousey, and she lasted even less than Alexis Davis. And Ronda Rousey obviously set a new record. I believe that's the quickest submission in a championship fight. It's crazy. You look at Ronda Rousey's last 3 fights; they've lasted less than 2 minutes and They've lasted less than 2 minutes. Less than 2 minutes for 3 world title fights. You look at her last 4 fights, and they've oh wait, no, sorry, I got confused. Yeah, but her last 3 fights lasted less than 2 minutes. That's insanity. Lee, you covered up the fight pretty well. I want to talk about what's next for Ronda Rousey, and it's something that I want to look at in terms of the pay-per-view and women's MMA in general. I think a fight like this, it's very good for Ronda Rousey, right? Cements her legacy, and she's talking about wanting to be retiring undefeated and things like that. I mean, she's looking like an Anderson Silva, like a Kobe, like a Jordan, like a, the greatest and things like that. But I don't think it does well for the UFC's pay-per-views. as a whole, because I checked out the reaction, post pay-per-view, post fight. The old Kaspooch went around on the forums and checked out what people were saying on Twitter. Rich Franklin isn't the only secret agent, and to be honest, the fans are really split, but a majority of the fans are saying that they're never going to buy another Ronda Rousey pay-per-view again. A lot of people in general were saying that they're really glad they didn't buy the pay-per-view. I buy every pay-per-view, all right? I like sitting there, I like watching it quietly. Dennis, I know you're at the bars, partying, there's streams going off balloons and things like that. Free panty garments for everyone. I like to sit there and watch the fights, and a lot of people say, I'm really glad I didn't buy that. I don't understand that. I mean, everyone's entitled to their own opinion, and you know what, whatever, that's fine. I will say, though, this is a great pay-per-view. I think you had every single one was a finish except for Holly Holm and Raquel Pennington. And that was a great fight as well. You had Jake Ellenberger coming back. You had Alan Jobin with a great KO. You had Tony Ferguson with a great rear naked choke. You had Ronda Rousey just annihilating Kat Zingano. A lot of people's complaints were about the fact that they were quick fights and that Ronda Rousey is just too dominant, and that the women's division in general is not so much that it's a weak division, but it's just that Ronda Rousey's that good, they're not going to buy a pay-per-view. And I want to talk about something that happened during the press conference. A reporter by the name of Daniel Flynn asked Ronda Rousey a couple of questions. One was, how's she dealing with all the things that she's doing? I mean, this chick's doing it seems like a movie every second week, and a photo shoot and this and that. And the other thing he asked, do you think that it hurts the pay-per-view that Chris Weidman and Vitor Belfort will no longer be on the card? And Ronda Rousey, she was pretty defensive in her response, and she mentioned how, that kind of attitude and things like that, and that's the culture that needs to be changed, that, people asking these kind of questions, it shouldn't be asked of her and things like that. And, I respectfully disagree. I just want to make something very clear here on Submission Radio. We love women's MMA. We're very pro, all that kind of stuff. And I don't want to see the women's division go anywhere. I absolutely should stay. But I think it was a very valid question. I think Chris Weidman and Vitor Belfort being off this card, I think it definitely hurt the card. It's got nothing to do with Ronda Rousey's dominance, lack of skill. It's because she's too dominant. And a lot of people just decided, you know what? She's going to win. I'm not going to pay $60 for a quick fight. And in this case, it was a 14-second fight. And a lot of fans were turned off by that, And it's a bit of an unfortunate thing. I don't understand why people aren't fans of women's MMA. I think to each their own. I think the girls have really shown and proven that they really bring it, and there's a lot of great fights. Perfect example, the co-main event. Here you go. Great fight. Cyborg knocking out a girl in Charmaine Tweed in 46 seconds. But I will say, though, as big as a star as Ronda Rousey is, she's not a proven star when it comes to pay-per-view buys. I think she had a few cards last year where the buys were only a couple of 100,000, if that. And I'm very, very curious what the numbers do for this card, because as much as I thought it was a great card, if anyone hasn't watched it and there's replays playing, you still can buy it. By all means, do it. It's a great card. You'll enjoy it. But I don't think it's going to do well in numbers. What do you think, Dennis?
No, I agree with you, Cass. There's a lot of people comparing Ronda Rousey, and Dana White is one of them, to Mike Tyson. They go, Ronda Rousey, is she the Mike Tyson of MMA? And she's not the Mike Tyson of MMA to me personally. And there's a big difference to what she does in that octagon to say when Anderson Silva fought, or, a Chuck Liddell fought, or Mike Tyson fought. And the difference is, with those guys, the fights were quick, but there was certain aura around them. People went and watched those fights, and, it was KO. It was drastic. It was crazy. Ronda Rousey, she's dominant. Her fights are very similar to a lot of the other guys who were dominant and had the aura around them, but for some reason, she just doesn't have it with fans. I don't know what it is. I don't feel like she's the Mike Tyson of MMA. She just doesn't have that feeling to me like Mike Tyson did when he walked to that ring, and you just didn't know what was going to happen next, and you were sitting there, and you and your friends were all exciting on the edge of your seats, like when Anderson Silva walked down and fought Forrest Griffin and all those other guys. You just don't have that. Even Rampage Jackson, you don't have that with her. I can't explain that. It's something mental, it's something psychological, something that she hasn't done with the fans yet. Maybe she hasn't been in that octagon long enough to win them over in certain aspects. Maybe they want to see more of her. Maybe, I don't know what it is, but I don't think it has anything to do with the fact whether she's a woman or not. It's just she hasn't connected with the fans the way that a Mike Tyson had, or those other great fighters had. So I understand that Dana White's comparing it to Mike Tyson, but I just don't think many people feel that way. A fight that I'd like to see Ronda Rousey have, however, is a fight with Betch Correa. You know, she is a fighter who looks like she's ready to really promote their next fight. She's someone that's going to bring in a great story into their next fight. Dana White was talking about how she wanted to go into the cage and challenge her after she beat Kat Zingano. That's the kind of stuff that would really sell a pay-per-view. I think going into this one, you know, both girls are very respectful to each other, especially with what Kat's gone through. I think Ronda needs some people to really challenge her. She needs some great stories going to more of her fights. I think that will get people caring more. I think Betch is a great fighter to do that. And it could possibly be something great that, you know, the UFC can do. Well, I don't know, Cass, what do you think? Do you think Ronda Rousey is the Mike Tyson of MMA, and who would you like to see her fight next?
Look, you've covered a lot of things, so I'll try and sort of talk about each individual point. To start with, you know, yeah, Betch Correa, I don't think she's the one to beat Ronda Rousey, but I know she would definitely do a lot more to promote that fight. She's already started promoting that fight, you know, well before tonight. She's been promoting that fight for weeks and weeks now. She's been saying that she wanted Ronda Rousey, and Ronda Rousey, you know, she seems keen on her as well. With all due respect to Kat Zingano, because I have the utmost respect for her, she didn't promote that fight, the UFC did. You know, it was the countdowns, it's all that kind of stuff that promoted that fight. You know what? Kat Zingano's got so much going through her mind. Whatever. It's understandable. I know with Betch Correa, she would definitely promote that fight, and she believes in herself. Whether other people do or don't, she believes in herself. And sometimes that's enough to sell a pay-per-view. That's enough for people to go, wow, you know, she believes in herself so much. And you can turn those doubters and think, well, maybe she will, and maybe she does have a chance. With your points about people not respecting or, you know, not getting behind Ronda Rousey, I think there's two things. I think one of them is sexism. I think there is a lot of sexism. It's an unfortunate fact, but it is there. And the other thing is, anything new takes time to build traction. I think with MMA, believe it or not, it's a niche sport. Some people don't like to admit that because MMA fans are the most passionate fans there are, or some of them are some of the most passionate fans that there are, but it is a niche sport. If you compare MMA to something like soccer or baseball or basketball or hockey or, you know, Aussie rules footy or anything like that, these sports are so much more. They've been around for longer, and the fans, they come in greater numbers. You know what I mean? MMA may be a universal sport, but it just hasn't been around as long. How long has soccer been around for? Like, over 100 years? I think AFL similar as well. Like, it's just been around for so long. You just can't really compare that with MMA. It's a very young sport. It's like a few decades old, basically, you know, mainstream-wise. So I think even though MMA is still catching on, women's MMA is even newer. So when you take something like that, a lot of people, you know, they're sort of resistant, you know. It's been a man's sport for so long. A lot of these fans that are hardcore fans that have been watching MMA for so long, they can't really adapt to that change or whatever the case is. They don't want to, whatever. And I think a lot of guys are like, look, I don't like the fact that women are headlining these cards. And I think the other side of it, like I said before, is the fact that Ronda Rousey's so dominant. And some people have put off fights where they can predict the outcome. If they know who's going to win, if they think, look, this person's going to get dominated in 30 seconds, I'm not going to pay $60 for it. I'd rather pay $60 for a war. So I think all those combined facts, there's a lot of casual fans that absolutely love Ronda Rousey. But I think a lot of people sometimes have their head in the sand a little bit, and they think, what are you talking about? Women's MMA is great. Everybody loves it. I agree that it's great, but not everybody loves it, and that's a fact. That's an unfortunate fact, but there's a lot of people. You can check the statistics. You can go on any forum. Go on Sherdog, go on the Underground. There's a lot of people saying, not in my words, but they're saying they're not going to buy another Ronda Rousey pay-per-view. They're not going to buy another pay-per-view with women headlining the card. You know, that's a fact. Whether you like it or not, there are people saying that. So, I don't know. I will say Ronda Rousey, she's by far the biggest female star, you know, in the UFC and one of the biggest female star athletes there is. But in terms of pay-per-view draws, she's not a proven star.
Yeah, I think the other thing that might cause this is she does win a lot of her fights with submissions. Now, I feel like if Chris Cyborg was in the UFC as long as Ronda Rousey had been, and if she, you know, her division was in there and she had that many fights back to back, I almost feel like she could be the Mike Tyson of MMA because she goes in there and she knocks girls' heads off. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
She walks in there, she's intimidating. There's this whole thing happening in combat sports, and it still happens to this day. A lot of people who are striking fans, they don't really respect wins by submissions as much as wins by KO. And maybe if Ronda Rousey went out there and she just KO'd girls and didn't armbar them, maybe she would be more of a Mike Tyson. But I just feel like the way that she wins, submissions are great, and I'm a huge fan of grappling, but it's just not devastating enough to be a Mike Tyson. I feel like Chris Cyborg, she could be a Mike Tyson. She goes in there, she looks scary, you know what I mean? Not in a bad way or anything like that, but she's a specimen. She's in great shape. You know, she goes in there, she knocks heads off, and people go, all right, you know, that's kind of Mike Tyson-ish. And that may be one of the things that's affecting Ronda Rousey as well when I think about it.
I wouldn't disagree with her not being the Mike Tyson, and I think that the armbars definitely have that devastation effect. I just think with the casual fans, they may not appreciate it as much as, say, the hardcore fans. You know what I mean? And like sometimes even in highlight reels, I think it's so much easier to put in a knockout as opposed to a submission. But I mean, that's just my opinion. I'd love to see her fight Bet Correia or Holly Holm, but really, after that, there's not too many other challenges. You could even make another fight against Sarah McMahon because that one ended so quickly and there was quite a bit of controversy. But again, you know what? I do not see Ronda Rousey main eventing another pay-per-view, at least not for a while. We'll see what the numbers are when this comes back. And I was speaking to a guy who mentioned that, you know, she's not proven, as in she hasn't had a chance. And I disagree with that. I think what his point was that she hasn't had the chance to, you know, main event a pay-per-view by herself. Well, obviously she has had a couple of chances. But the thing is, if you're a proven star, whether you're main eventing or co-main eventing, the numbers are going to be in there. You know, if you're a huge star and you're below Chris Weidman and Lyoto Machida, then in theory, wouldn't you just be supplementing that, or wouldn't they be supplementing your numbers? But if the whole pay-per-view as a whole doesn't do that great, again, I'm not saying she shouldn't main event cards. I'm just saying from a business standpoint, I think because of a lot of the casual fans that don't get behind women's MMA as much, she's going to be put on fights, you know, like with a John Jones, with a Chris Weidman, things like that. Because you hear those people saying, I'm not going to buy another Ronda Rousey pay-per-view. Okay, but will you buy a Chris Weidman pay-per-view? Will you buy a Robbie Lawler one? Will you buy a John Jones one? So that's my 2 cents. There's a couple of things we're going to talk about really briefly before we go, because I think we've been talking for quite a while. Big news came out just recently. Anderson Silva is going to admit to taking PEDs for therapeutic reasons. He doesn't have a date, I believe, just yet with Athletic Commission, but he's going to admit that he took, you know, certain substances to fix his leg. Huge news, because he denied it. He said, no, I didn't take it. I was fought 19 years and this and that. And now he's going to admit it. What do you make of this, Dennis?
Well, it's interesting. You know, it looks like possibly the lawyers got to him. They want to reduce the suspension and maybe it's a legal tactic. But at the same time, you know, you would never admit something like that unless it was true. So at the end of the day, it's just, I feel like it's something that's coming too late now. And we were talking to Pat Cummins about this, and you and me were talking about this. You know, when you do something wrong, just admit it. People will forgive you. But now down the track, when you start admitting it after denying it, that's when people really start questioning your word. Because you go, well, I didn't take it. I don't know why everybody's up in arms. I never took it. You know, I'm innocent. And now you're admitting that you're not innocent. Well, why did you say that you were innocent? And that's what causes people not to trust you anymore. And that's what causes people, you know, to question you as a fighter and your legacy and that kind of stuff. So overall, you know, it's just not a good move for Anderson. What did you think when you heard the newscast?
I feel like if you ask someone a question, you know, put yourself in this position, you know, if you're listening, if you ask someone a question and they answer and they say, I swear on my life I didn't do this, you can trust me, you can test me, I swear on my life I didn't do it, right? And then you find out a week later that, all right, it turns out I did do it. You're never going to trust that person again, and it puts a lot of doubt. Whereas if you ask them in the beginning and they were like, and they minced their words and this and that, you kind of have a feeling like, you probably did something, but you don't want to admit it. But because Anderson was so adamant about not doing it and saying things like, you know, I've fought 19 years or whatever the case is, and I've never cheated, why do I have a reason to now? And now he's answering his own question. Oh, actually, turns out I did have a reason. So I'm not trying to be harsh on Anderson or this and that, but I think it definitely is a tactic. And yeah, you know what? It may be very true. At the same time, I mean, that to me is the obvious excuse. Oh, you know, I used it for my leg. I'm not saying that he didn't use it for his leg. And apparently the lawyers are going to claim that he had such minimal substances that they wouldn't affect his performance. And you know what? Maybe that's true. But like I said a while ago, and I think a couple of episodes ago, if you're taking those substances, you either don't fight, you either don't return to fight, or you take a really long layoff. I get it. You know, that was a really devastating injury to his leg. So if he wants to take steroids and, help his recovery because he wants to live a life and walk and things like that, sure, by all means. But you can't fight. You can't fight. Not unless you give it, I don't know, a few years. I'm not a doctor. I don't know how long these things take to get out of your system or the effects to get nullified. But you can't say, look, I did it to heal my leg, but I still fought anyway. You can't have both. If you're going to do that, you either wait longer and it takes you longer to heal, and you don't have people saying, oh, wow, he recovered so quickly. Oh, it's amazing how quickly he recovered. You just can't do that. And the other thing is, it's not going to fly with the State Athletic Commission. It's absolutely not going to happen. I mean, how many guys were on TRT and they were like, look, I've got the doctor slip. My doctor okayed it. It's fine. I should be on TRT. And the State Athletic Commission said, well, you didn't notify us, so here's your suspension. Enjoy sitting out. It's not going to make any difference whatsoever. And honestly, I was waiting for something from Anderson because he was saying, I can't wait for the truth to come out and this and that, etc., etc. And here's the truth apparently coming out. Doesn't really make him seem any better. So it's not going to change anything, and he's still going to be serving his suspension.
Absolutely, Casper. Agree with you, and very interested to see what happens with the Athletic Commission from there on. Definitely, I don't think that would fly, but I'm excited and hopeful to see Anderson Silva fight one more time, even though I am a little bit disappointed with the way that he's handled the situation. Now, Cass, something that happened earlier this week was Joe Rogan, a guy that we really respect as a broadcaster and a podcaster, talking about the fact that it was a high possibility that Fedor was using steroids during one of his fights in Pride. Joe Rogan said now that he basically said that the possibility is high, and it's because Anderson's failing this test that everybody's sort of looking at possible fighters who may have been using PEDs. Now, what did you think when you heard this, Cass?
First of all, I appreciate the fact that Joe said it was a high... Well, okay, he said it was a possibility instead of saying that, he thinks he did take steroids. I can appreciate that. It's a little bit of fence-sitting, but I don't appreciate the fact that he said it was a high possibility. I'm very much one of those guys where you're innocent until you're proven guilty. And Fedor's obviously never failed a drug test. And Fedor, he came back at Joe and he said that he did get tested, and a lot of people think that they weren't tested in Pride, but they did get tested, and, he never failed any test. I know that things came out a while back with the contracts, and I don't remember the wording, but it sort of insinuated that you can take steroids, all right? I'm not going to comment too much because I don't remember what it said in that contract, but a lot of people are like, holy shit, could this mean that everybody was juicing in Pride? Look, one of the biggest points that Joe made was that Fedor lost a lot of muscle and how he was a thick dude, and then when he went to America, he lost a lot of muscle. Well, there's a couple of things, all right? First of all, you do get old. It's going to happen, and Fedor wasn't a spring chicken. The other thing is, Fedor, I believe he stopped lifting weights. I believe he did a lot more aerobic workouts. That's something that, a lot of people knew that. I don't know whether Joe missed that or what happened, but, Fedor stopped lifting weights, and that could explain why he lost a lot of muscle. Either way, look, is it a possibility? Absolutely. But we don't know that. So I just think Joe saying that there's a high possibility is leaning a little bit, further to one side, which I don't agree with. Like I said, there's no proof that Fedor took PEDs. I know that when you look at someone's physique, it's not a telltale sign. There's so many guys that did test positive for PEDs and they didn't look that great. I mean, Tim Sylvia is one guy that comes to mind. Fedor always looked like his diet consisted of, coffee and donuts. I know that doesn't really say much, but to say that there was high possibilities on PEDs, I honestly disagree with that. What did you make of it, Dennis?
Yeah, just because Anderson Silva, tested positive for PEDs, I just don't think it's right for, guys like Fedor Emelianenko or anybody else for that matter that doesn't have, like you mentioned, a history of PEDs to be, get their name dragged through the mud. I think it's unnecessary. Look, Fedor is retired. He's not going to be fighting anytime soon. There's no way he can do anything, to prove Joe wrong. And I just don't think that with everything that Fedor has done with the sport, everything that he's done for the sport, and all the amazing fights that he's fought, I mean, geez, there's Fedor fans all across the world. I just don't think it's right for Joe to really talk about it like that. I mean, at the end of the day, Joe knows what it does when he suggests something. He knows that there are thousands and thousands of people that listen to his show, that he knows that people are going to take this and put it in their headlines all across every website and clickbait it until it's, gone great and died off. So at the end of the day, I just don't think, Joe was thinking when he said that, because you're taking a guy who's innocent, who hasn't done anything, never actually tested positive for one PED, and you're dragging his name through the mud. And at the end of the day, with MMA being in the state that it's in, with Anderson testing positive and all these guys testing positive, it's good to have a guy that you can look up to. It's good to have a guy that you can name and say, hey, this guy never tested positive for PEDs. And look at him. He always looked like he ate donuts and coffee, and look how well he did. And, he's always been someone I think that a lot of people have looked up to. So just because one guy like Anderson Silva tests positive for PEDs, it doesn't mean that we have to go out on a witch hunt and start claiming other people have. Look, I think it's different where it's a guy like Vitor Belfort, a guy like Hector Lombard, guys who have a history of PEDs. Then maybe you can say, well, maybe he was on PEDs here. Maybe he was on PEDs there. Sure, the guys have failed. But guys like Fedor, guys that never failed, I just don't think it's right to put their name through the mud. And, what can Fedor do to prove it now? He can't do anything. It's something that he can't really prove. So if if there's no way of him proving it, there's just no reason for him to take Fedor's name and put it through the mud. I just think a lot of people around MMA felt it was a little bit unfair. And, I'm sure that looking back on it, Joe, didn't mean to do it like that, but it just didn't go down well with me. I just didn't really like it.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. I think, look, Joe's one of those guys where nothing's off limits. If you ask him a question, he's going to answer it, and he's going to answer with his honest opinion. And that's one of the things I really like about Joe, and that's one of the things that I respect about him. In my opinion, I think that, like you said, Dennis, just because Anderson Silva tested doesn't mean that you can sort of look at everybody and start pointing the finger. Well, I mean, this guy probably tested, he probably took it, and he probably took it, and he probably... If you're going to say Fedor probably took it, then you might as well look at, the whole UFC roster and the whole Pride roster and pretty much any fighter in the past. I mean, I get it. There are some times where you can look at it and think, oh, well, the chances of this, but at the end of the day, it's innocent until proven guilty. So I think Fedor's no more guilty than any other fighter that maybe looks suspicious but hasn't ever tested, positive for steroids. And the thing is, Fedor, I think one of the reasons why Joe's saying that is because Fedor was so successful. You know what I mean? Like, if there was some guy who lost a lot of fights. I mean, there's guys who do take steroids and they lose fights. They're not the greatest fighters. I think one of the reasons why, he mentioned Fedor was because Fedor obviously was so successful regardless of how he looked or anything like that. So, yeah, look, I agree with you, Dennis. I think that I'm not even going to say Fedor was clean because I don't know that, but I'm not going to make the assumption to say that, Fedor, there's a high possibility that he took steroids.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, it's just this kind of talk. I just think people just need to get over it, and everybody just needs to move on because it's just negativity in MMA. There's no need to start pointing guys out and say, oh, maybe he's on PEDs or maybe he wasn't, because if he doesn't have a history of it, it just doesn't do anything. And I just feel it's a negativity that needs to be avoided in MMA. So there's just no reason to talk about it, in my opinion, when it comes to a guy like Fedor, because you will never find out. And at the end of the day, all it does is make people upset or drags Fedor's name through the mud. So it just doesn't seem like it makes a lot of sense to me.
Well, it's like saying, oh, Chris Weidman's very successful, so I think he may be taking PEDs. You know what I'm saying? Because at the end of the day, like, it's not impossible to pass tests. Chris Weidman's never failed a test, so why would we suspect him? Why? Because he's been successful. So I think similar thing with Fedor. Like, you can have your assumptions or whatnot, but I disagree with saying that there was a high chance. I'm open to the possibility that, is it possible that Fedor took steroids? Absolutely. Anything's possible in this life. Is there a chance? There is a chance, but I wouldn't go as far as to say that there is a high chance that Fedor was on PEDs.
Yeah, absolutely. That's it. Well, Cassie, you and me have been really jabbering on a lot this episode. A lot of great topics covered. I think we're running out of time, though.
I think we're well out of time. I think we ran out of time a while ago. But you know what? It's a good thing because we are going to be taking a really short break. Just a one weekend break. There will be no episode next weekend. There's no big events next weekend anyway, but we will be back the following weekend. Submission Radio will be back in the same time, same format as usual. We'll have some nice, sexy guests once again. And of course, I want to thank this week's guests, Rich Franklin and Andrei Arlovski. It's always great when we get a new guest, and it's always great when we get a returning guest, especially a guy like Rich Franklin, who's always a pleasure to talk to. So, big thank you to those guys. Let us know what you think in the comments below. Let us know what you think about these, supposed Fedor allegations. Let us know what you think about Ronda Rousey. Will the numbers do well for UFC 184 despite the fact that Chris Weidman and Vitor fell off? And what do you think? Do you enjoy watching Ronda Rousey fight? And is $60 too much for you to spend for a pay-per-view that, a main event that may go for 14 seconds, or do you love it and will you buy it anyway? Let us know what you think in the comments below. Hit us up on Twitter @SubmissionAUS. Dennis, any last words for the fans?
Yeah, there is, man. You and me, we're packing our bags off to Adelaide.
Oh,
We're
yeah.
going to be covering the UFC Adelaide presser. That's, of course, going to be Stipe Miocic, which is Mark Hunt. YouTube.com/Submission Radio AU. We're going to have a lot of content coming your way. We're going to have the press conference, of course, a lot of interviews with the guys, including Stipe and Mark Hunt, and a lot of other stuff happening as well. So make sure, if you're not subscribed yet, subscribe now, or check out the channel. There's going to be a lot of stuff happening on there, of course. The technique of the week, we've got a lot of exciting techniques coming your way, a lot of really exciting Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu techniques that you may have never seen before. So if you're someone that's looking for a new technique for your gym to wow everybody, well, we're going to have it. That's every Wednesday, comes out on the channel. And make sure you follow us on Twitter at SubmissionAUS. We'll be actually giving you guys live tweets from the Adelaide press conference, letting you know exactly what's going on. A lot of exclusive content on the Twitter, so make sure you follow us.
Yeah, that's literally a matter of hours away. That's like 12 to 24 hours away. Till then, guys, that's another week. We'll catch you in 2 weeks.